It's 10 o'clock. It's time for the council to be in session. Ms. Misikowski, Mr. Pacheco, 3 members present, 7 more for a quorum. It's 10 minutes after 10, and we have Mrs. Chick, Ms. Goldberg, Ms. Sikowski, Mr. Pacheco, Ms. Padilla, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Ridley Thomas, Mrs. Walters. We have, Mr. Burnson, we have 9 members. We need 1 for a quorum. 9 members, we need 1 for a quorum. Mr. Fuhr, Ms. Galanter, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Holden, Mr. Wax. We have 10. Now Holden is here, so call the roll.
Burnson, Chick, Fuhr, Galanter, Goldberg, Hernandez, Holden, Miskowski, Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley Thomas, Furnish, Wax, Walters, Ferraro, 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
The council will please come to order. This is a meeting of the City Council for the City of Los Angeles on the 13th day of July, 1999. There are 15 council districts in the city. The regular meeting days are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We are currently being viewed by cable subscribers throughout the Los Angeles area on Channel 35, and we're also being monitored by council phone. The first order of business.
On the regular agenda, items 2 through 5 are requested to continue those matters until August 3rd.
2 through 5. Is there any objections to that? Seeing none, that will be the order. Don't we think we ought to approve the minutes?
Approval of the minutes.
All right. Ms. Goldberg moves, Mr. Burnson seconds. There's no objections, unanimous vote. The next item,
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
if there's no objections, unanimous vote. Next item,
On the regular agenda, item 26, a request to continue that matter until September 7th.
if there's no objections, unanimous vote. Mr. Padilla, what number did you want? 35. Mr. Padilla would like,
Transportation Committee?
Mr. Padilla would like the 35 to be referred to the Transportation Committee. Is there any objections to that? 35. If not, that will be the order.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item number 6 on the regular agenda is the reappointment of commissioner.
Which one?
Mr. Fernando, give us the name.
Mr. Peter Whale to the Planning Commission for the term ending June 30th,
Peter,
04.
Peter Wild, Wild or Wild?
Weil.
This is a reappointment to the Planning Commission. Any discussion on this? If not, Mr. Holden moves, prepare the roll, tabulate the vote. That is approved. Peter, thank you very much for serving the
Thank
city.
you.
Forthwith on that. Next item,
Item number 7 on the regular agenda, reappointment of Dr. Fernando Torres Gil to the Board of Harbor Commissioners.
Dr. Fernando, welcome back to Los Angeles.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess the president.
This is an appointment to the Harbor Commission. Any discussion on this appointment? With his background, I don't think there's any discussion needed. Prepare the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Doctor, you've been approved. We want to thank you for serving the city.
Thank you.
We know of your background and the good work that you've done in the past, and we expect you to continue to do that good work.
I look forward to working with the council and the city of Los Angeles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Forthwith on that. Next item.
Item 23 on the regular agenda is
Did-
appointment of Commissioner Joyce Foster to Board of Building and Safety Commissioners.
Item what?
23.
23. This is a reappointment of Joyce Foster to the Board of Building and Safety Commissioners. Mr. Padilla, did you want to be heard?
Morning, Joyce.
Morning.
Fellow council members, wanted to stand and just make a personal note. I had the pleasure and the honor of working with Commission President Joyce Foster on building and safety. I think she serves as a great example of what I think all commission presidents should serve like. She's wonderful to work with and truly serves the city of Los Angeles, and I recommend her reappointment.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Padilla moves, prepare the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Ms. Foster, you've been reappointed. Congratulations, and thank you for serving the city. Forthwith on that item. Next item.
Item number 1 on the regular agenda is an item notice for public hearing.
Is there anybody in the chamber that wants to be heard on item number 1? Anybody want to be heard on item number 1? If not, Mr. Holden, you have a motion you want to make?
Move it.
Move, prepare the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
That is approved. Next item.
Items number 8 through 22 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Can we, any specials on those items, 6 through 20, 8 through 22? Any specials? 15 and 19. Any others? Any other specials? If not, prepare the roll on 8 through 22 with the exception of 15 and 19. Tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Those are approved. Next item.
Items number 24 through 31, with the exception of 26, which was continued.
We have cards on 27, 29, 30, 32, 34, and 35 has been sent to committee. 27, 29, 30, 32, and 34. These are, I think, examples of, 35 has been sent to committee. I think those cards are all examples of committees not having a quorum, and we have to have so that's another thing I'd like to see happen, that members that are assigned to committees go to the committees, because Mr. Hernandez, you agree, I take it?
Mr. President, I do agree with you, except that item 29 is a short deadline issue. It was a personal services contract on someone helping us prepare a grant application.
But that is, our friend wants to be heard on it.
Right, so you're sending it to committee first?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
29?
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying, but we may think about that in the future. Okay,
So it's items 24 through 31, with the exception of 26, 27, 29, and 30.
and 32. Huh? Oh, huh? What's that? Next group. Okay, the next item.
So currently before you is 24 through 31, with the exception of 26, 27, 29, and 30.
Yes. Okay, the next group. Oh, yeah, prepare the roll on those. I'm sorry, I thought we voted on them. Tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
And those are approved.
The next grouping on the agenda is items 32 through 34.
32 through 34, hearings have been held.
Jackie wants 32 special.
Miss, you want 32 special, Ms. Goldberg? And 34. 33 is the closed session item. We'll call that special too. Next item.
Items number 32 through 34, all of them are currently called special. So the next items are 35 through 38. But 35 was sent to committee,
Yes.
36, 37, and 38.
All right, anybody want to be heard on any of those items? Anyone want to be heard on those items? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. We have somebody want to be heard on council called it special 36, 37, 38. Any discussion there? If not, prepare the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
Those are approved. Next item.
The next item is item number 15, called special by Councilmember Goldberg.
Ms. Goldberg, you call 15 special?
Yes, I just wanted to point out for those who were aware of the various controversies around this, that basically the new lease includes explicit language to specify non-retaliation, that the service contractor worker retention ordinance and the living wage ordinance are binding not only with United Contractors, but with all their subcontractors. And so that this now brings this lease into line, and I just wanted to point that out because there had been substantial controversy about it, and so I would now move approval.
Ms. Goldberg moves approval on item 15. Prepare the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
That is approved. Forthwith on that. Next item.
Item number 19, called special by Councilmember Goldberg.
Okay, any discussion on 19? If not, prepare the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
That is approved. Next item.
Item number 27, called special.
Leonard Shapiro.
Mr. President and council members, you're certifying the results of the Mid-City Project Area Committee, PAC, for the Community Redevelopment Agency, CRA. They had an election, and you're certifying the results of this right now. This brings up the point that I noticed that there were 7 members of to represent the residential members of the community, and then nobody ran and nobody was elected to any of those positions. The point is, people have to understand what the function of the PAC is in every CRA project, and most people don't understand, and the ones that do use it to their own benefit. We have to understand that Community Redevelopment Agency projects are set up so that you can remove blight from certain areas. And blight has been very loosely defined to mean most anything that the CRA wants it to mean. But the point becomes, the principle of the CRA is they will put up new buildings, and the taxes derived from the new buildings will be the tax increment, and that will fuel a rebuilding of the area. But in actual fact, this does not happen that way. Each property gets used to get, up till last 2 years ago, an increase of 2% each year in assessed valuation. And that money goes to the CRA as tax increments. And that's the big lie that's involved in there. People say the only cost to the city on a CRA project is the new building, and the new building you wouldn't have had anyhow. So therefore, vote for the CRA and vote for the project. But the point is, most of the money for the CRA comes from the incidental increments that have been accumulating in the CRA for a long, long time. Now, of course, the day of reckoning has come. They don't have any more 2% increases, and they're running out of money fast, and they're talking about giving you their complete responsibility. My point is, yes, you got this PAC coming up there. They've been certified, but there seems to be a lack. If there's no residential representation, nobody even bothering to run. Maybe people got to take an education course. What is the CRA? What is it supposed to do, and how did it try to do it? Mr. President.
Okay, item 27 has been, public hearing has been closed. Any discussion on this item? If not, prepare the roll on 27. Tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
That is approved. Next item.
Item 29 called special.
Mr. Shapiro again.
This is Mr. Shapiro again. Mike Hernandez, council member of the 1st District, says that he's applying for this 15,000, he's applying for a grant application that seeks federal planning and implementation grant funds from the Transportation Equity Act. I think it's a good idea. But today is July 13th, and this grant expires on July 15th. And somehow or other, I was talking to the council member who was involved. He was not notified. He had to dig up this information himself. I think the CLA, which you have here, is supposed to keep everybody informed on legislation and grants that are available that can be used. This one definitely can be used, and this $15,000, it's not too late. It could have been too late, but it's not too late now. You still got the 2 days to act on it. But the point is, this money's available. Federal government made it available, and it should be used. Now, how many other projects are there available where money is made available from the state and from the federal government, and it's not being used? How many members are not being informed about what grants are available and should be done? I see the CLA is approaching me now. Maybe he's got something he's going to tell me. But the point is now, I think somebody goofed here. If you want to give a person 2 days leeway to prepare a grant, if he didn't do it ahead of time, he'd be in bad shape. Mr. President.
Public hearing is closed on 27. Any discussion? Mr. Hernandez?
Mr. President, basically what's happened here is it has come to our attention that there's a potential funding source for an information technology center, and Los Angeles would be competing with many other cities. We've been working on this grant application for the last 3 weeks. This is a personal services contract, would be coming out of my council budget. The reason I basically focused on it was there was some hearings by the Federal Highway Administration that talked about trying to mitigate and how it is that we can use Federal Highway Administration funding systems for purposes of information centers that would basically save people from having to drive places to get information. And in the community of Cypress Park, the Taylor Yard development, the Santa Monica Conservancy development, and the fact that the Pacific Pipeline is putting in a fiber optic line made it an ideal situation. Because of the short time frame, we've hired consultants to help us with the application. And again, it's a personal services contract coming out of my general purpose fund. So basically, it's for that purpose, and I just ask for a unanimous vote.
Okay. Okay, we have item 29. Prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 eyes.
That is approved. Next item.
Item number 30 called special.
Okay, we have same reporter.
Mr. President, thank you. This is my third and last item because you postponed the fourth one that I signed for. I think what's involved here is that the ITA has completed its analysis and it needs an employee to help them do what an audit suggested. Do you remember that audit? The audit suggested that it's costing the city of LA $800,000 a year because they're not paying their telephone bills on time. And the ITA said, well, we asked the mayor, and the mayor didn't give it to us, and the mayor said they didn't ask us on time, and whatever it was. Now, this is the way to trying to solve it by hiring a new person, and this new person is going to be sure that you pay the bills. Well, that's all right, and there's a lot of other things that have to be done. Right now, we're talking about a big fight that's occurring for cable internet access to all. The mayor is backing AT&T, and he says to get more done by backing this concern, and the city council is on record, more or less, that you back open access to everybody. That's the kind of, I back that too. I think open access is good for the public, and that should be the primary factor in anybody's consideration. And while we're on this, since the city council itself is responsible for the activities of these cable companies, somebody should really look at them a little hard. Like, I got the basic cable reception on my TV cable, and I pay $10 a month. Now, it took me about a year to get this $10 too. The company wanted to charge me $30. And when I tell them I didn't want 30, I just want the basic cable, I finally got it, but I persevered. But you can't get it without really hard fighting on this. And there's no reason why cable companies should act that way. If the basic rate for basic services, including Channel 35, is $10 a month, then everybody should be able to have it, instead of having them try to sell them on $20, $25, $30, $35, and $50 a month. We know they're out to make money, but they're under the supervision of the city council, and I'm telling you right now, they're not doing it right. They're making it too hard for the average citizen to get basic service. And on this particular matter that's before you today, that yes, you can use this this extra employee to make sure that you don't goof up on obvious things, and that's also when the auditor brings you forth information to show you're wasting $800,000. Yes, you got to act on it quickly, Mr. President.
Ruth to come here, I want to go pee. Okay, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Mr. President, members of the council, I submit item 30A pursuant to the recommendation of the CAO, and with that, this essentially moves forward an item that many of us have been concerned about. It also comes pursuant to the audit that was done of ITA some months back, and it's essentially to put this Information Systems Manager 2 in place in order to close the loop on some of the issues we've had with respect to city telephone services. So I would hope that all members would recognize this is a timely matter and vote accordingly. I thank you. 38, Madam President.
All right, there being no other speakers, our first vote will be whether to substitute 30A. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody has any comments? Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
Okay, now we vote on 30 as amended, which is 30A. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 eyes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Moving
Madam-
right along.
Thank you,
Next
Madam
item, Mr.
President.
Clerk.
Forthwith, please.
Yes, forthwith on that, please.
Item 32 called special.
On item 32, we have a number of cards. I will call them in the order they appear here. First, Carmen Rogers, to be followed by... We have had a public hearing, as there are only 3. Well, one of these people already spoke in the public hearing. All right. Well, yes, go ahead. I can't see you when you're over there, so go ahead.
Hi, I'm Carmen Rogers from the Neighborhood Participation Project at USC, and there are 2 other points that I would like to mention about this Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. First of all, we'd like to let you know that USC has sent out a survey to a lot of different neighborhood organizations already to get information to help them to start organizing into neighborhood councils. And this is important that these neighborhoods organize themselves in their own boundaries, that they define themselves instead of having the city define bureaucratic districts for them that go along planning districts. So we'd like to make that point. Another point that we'd like to make is involving budgetary involvement. There is a thing called a community development block grant that we feel that these neighborhood councils should have the opportunity to get involved with budgetary planning. There's been research that has shown that neighborhood councils that are involved in budgetary processes are much more active, and there's a higher quality of participation involved in their participation through budgetary actions, and that there's this voice in capital resources that we feel is very important that you think about this. Probably won't get into the ordinance now, but that you think about this as you further develop the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. The idea is a bottom-up society, not a top-down, and participation.
Thank you. Just for your information and the organization's information, the Community Development Block Grant process is today one that encourages public participation, and we would welcome more than we get. Next speaker is J.H. McQuiston.
Thank you. Make this short and sweet. You all have the new charter. We just want to make sure that the language in the ordinance does not conflict with the charter. Y'all have my recent statement. It's really neutral as far as whether or not it's for or against. All I want to do is make sure that the ordinance conforms with the charter so we don't get into a lot of litigation, which could really foul up the mess. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Sandra Caden from Santa Monica.
Actually, I do live in the city of Los Angeles, and I protest the post-service. I'm Alexandra Caden, president of the Los Angeles League of Women Voters, and I just wanted to reiterate something that I think wasn't clear in the conversation last time this came up, and that is that this is the beginning of a process. I've been working with members of the City Council actually for almost, I think, 4 years on this, off and on, and others as well. There's nothing on this ordinance right now before you except to create the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and allow for the commission. Once that happens, then I think all of you will be and need to be engaged in helping move this really along. There's no ideal solution, there's no ideal answer. It's going to be something that requires flexibility, and although this was a terrible way to get to where we are where we are, and I think it's time to try to move forward together. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the cards we have, so the public hearing is closed. We have a lot of amendments on this thing. So let me start with Mr. Fuhrer.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I agree that today is the day to move forward and to establish what would be an historic department here in the city of Los Angeles. We have an opportunity, I think, as we discussed last time, to really show right out of the box that the City Council intends to not only keep faith with the voters on charter reform, but more than that, to take a symbolic first step toward the most important aspect of charter reform, and that's the reconnection of our electorate, of our constituencies, with government here in Los Angeles. I have 3 amendments that are being offered today, mindful of the good advice, I think, from colleagues, Ms. Mizikowski and others, that it's important for us to recognize the distinction between what ought to be contained in ordinance and that which ought to be left for regulation. I appreciated the comment. The first of my amendments pertains to the composition of...
What number is that?
You know what? It's not numbered yet, John. It'll be circulated in a second. Yeah, my bet is GH&I or something close to that. The first of those amendments pertains to the new board to be established and adds some specific language suggestive of the kind of diversity of interest that's important to be included as we give some direction to the new Department of Neighborhoods and to the mayor. And it includes specifically allusions to residential property owners and tenants, commercial, educational, nonprofit interests. The next of my amendments, can I just a little bit quieter, please? The next of my amendments pertains to the officers to serve on neighborhood councils and directs that the Department of Neighborhoods require that neighborhood councils ensure that their officers, without naming the number of them, but ensure that their officers reflect the diversity of interests in each neighborhood council. Without that direction, there's no requirement that that be so, and I think it would be a real shame if the neighborhood councils were led by people of the same interest. It's that very diversity that I think will enable neighborhood councils to work the best. And the third of my amendments just involves a word change in the purpose provision, because the way it is currently worded, I think inadvertently, would require every neighborhood in Los Angeles to be within a neighborhood council. And what we want to say is they should be within the boundaries designated for those neighborhood councils, because some communities may choose to express their civic involvement in other ways. So those are the 3 amendments that I'm offering today. But the underlying message that all of us, I think, agree with is today is the day to catapult forward the first step in creating neighborhood councils throughout the city of Los Angeles in the most vigorous way we can. Thank you.
Margaret? Mr. Bernstein.
Yes, members of the council, first of all, I want to thank all of you who were considerate enough to give me a vote to be heard on this subject. And for those of you that didn't, I would suggest that you, the public at least, have a little insight as to where these people are coming from. And I intend to make that public today. I've been on the council for 20 years, and for 20 years we've had successful neighborhood councils in my district. They work very nicely. The hardest pusher, who did not even want to give me an opportunity to be heard on this subject, has been in this council for nearly 30 years, approximately, and has never had a neighborhood council. Has never had a neighborhood council, yet wouldn't give me the consideration to continue this for 2 days, one business day, so that I could be heard on the subject. Now, I think that's kind of ironic, isn't it, for those of you that are out there listening? What is this rush to justice that has been amended? Is this the tool of the mayor or this committee? I mean, is it so urgent that we acted Friday that the rest of the council members didn't have an opportunity to really digest and look at this thing? I think not. I think this is a very important step. Nobody can ever accuse me of not wanting to have the neighborhood councils and people in the community involved. I'm the last one you could ever accuse of that because of the fact that I've done it. Not like some people over here who haven't done it. Now, yes, we need to act. The people have spoken, and I'm prepared to act, but I want to make sure we do it right, not wrong. You know, I think that experience teaches us that those that act in haste and without really looking at something carefully, we've done it time and time again. We've done it with ordinance such as brush clearance. We all jumped into that and voted for it. You know, we thought we were doing the right thing. If we had spent a little more time and looked at it a little more carefully, we could have done it correctly. Now, there are a number of things in here that need to be corrected, or at least clarified. I think most of it is good, particularly the stuff that came from the city attorney's office. Now, some of the additions I have some problems with, and I want to start to outline some of these things that I'm concerned about in here. First of all, the question of where these neighborhood councils should meet. And that is, and I'm offering this, and it hasn't been circulated yet, but you will get it in a moment, and I have 2 or 3 others coming. It says that, however, neighborhood council meetings are not all required to be held within the boundaries of the area represented by the neighborhood council. This language is drafted to make it possible for neighborhood council meetings to be held anywhere in the city without regard to neighborhood boundaries. I therefore move that the new language added to E of section 22.809 be deleted. I further move that the following new language be substituted for the language deleted. Neighborhood council meetings shall be held in areas represented by that neighborhood council unless the topic of the meeting has greater or citywide impact. And I think that's one that everybody can support. The second thing is, and I will have a motion, hopefully, that's being drafted now, and that's on D. It says, assist neighborhoods in preparing petitions for recognition of certification, identifying boundaries that minimize the division of communities and organize themselves in accordance with the plan. Well, we need a slightly different language on that, but basically what we want to do is we, as much as possible, want to have these particular neighborhood councils follow the planning areas that are designated in our community plan, with the exception of splitting communities, such as we have 5 communities in Van Nuys. So we want to try to do that as much as possible, and I'll be bringing that motion forward very shortly. And on K, facilitate the delivery of city services to neighborhoods as requested by neighborhood councils, including but not limited to acting as an advocate for meeting the neighborhood needs for city services and coordinating and involving the relevant city staff. I can barely hear myself. In integrated problem solving with neighborhood councils. The real question is, the mayor was so anxious to make sure that we didn't have involvement or control of the departments anymore that he made that part of the charter. I think the mayor ought to be responsible for this. I think he ought to take all the calls that we used to take. all the calls that we used to take about garbage collection, about street repairs, because we no longer have that interplay with those departments. And I'm going to bring a motion in that may relate to that. But I think you should seriously, yes, there should be some coordination between those councils to the mayor's office, but the mayor should be responsible for this, and I would like to see those calls go to the mayor's office, whoever that may be at the time. There are a couple other things. I think my time is probably running short. I'm waiting for some
Your
more.
time has run way over.
I'll press my button again, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Mrs. Chick.
I got this one, I don't have another paper.
Yes, colleagues, I rise again, as I did last week, to urge us to move forward today, as I wanted us to last week. I will remind you again that this is a framework, an umbrella under which we are going to operate, and that many of the specific rules and regulations will be worked out both in committee and when a new general manager is aboard. I think that there are several amendments that I have seen in writing that do not denigrate the basic recommendations of the committee and that I am willing to support. The one that I have accepted last week, Mr. Hernandez's, I am accepting in the spirit of compromise and with the desire for us to go forward. But I do express to you still some concern. In talking with the city attorney after the session last week, she did point out to me that by removing the role of the neighborhood councils to integrate city staff, to problem solve with our neighborhood councils, to remove that from the duties and put that only in the purposes, does in fact take away the real ability for the department to follow through. It's not something that will be enforceable. I heard some of you discuss concerns that we were creating another layer of bureaucracy, or that we were taking away the ability of council offices to be involved, and that is absolutely not the fact, and would not be what the language would accomplish if left in the duties. It simply said that neighborhood councils would be assisted by the staff of the department in accessing relevant city staff and other departments to problem solve. I think some of my colleagues were afraid that this was going to denigrate our role in facilitating the delivery of city services. Quite the contrary, I see it as an assist. I know that our staff spend a great deal of time pushing and prodding on departments to pay attention to our communities, to see that their problems are solved, and this department is being created to assist in that. I will seek to strengthen what will be left in the purposes when we go forward in the rules and regulations, because I do remind you, many of us will have 20, 30, 40, or 50 neighborhood councils in our district. It will be impossible for our staff to be at all of those meetings, and we will have to rely on Department of Neighborhood staff to communicate with us, to work with us and other city departments to make sure that the concerns and the needs expressed in those meetings are addressed and resolved. Thank you.
Ms. Goldberg.
Yes, I rise to ask you to support actually all the amendments. I've now read them all. I don't think any of them are a problem. And I think if we were to add all these amendments, what we would do is bring us closer to consensus with everybody participating in supporting this motion. If that's not going to happen, let me at least point out the 3 of the 4 of mine, which I think are the most important and the ones that I think must be acted upon today. And they deal with the board and the general manager and not with what the subsequent neighborhood councils will be like. 32A simply requires that all board members selected by the mayor to be on the Board of Commissioners have had some time in their life some organizing experience. That's just simply a requirement. Now, if we don't do that, my personal fear is that we'll end up with people who will not very well understand the task of organizing neighborhood councils. Doesn't mean they have to be currently doing it, doesn't mean that it couldn't have been many years ago, but anybody who's ever done community organizing understands the job of how to develop neighborhood councils, and I think that should be a minimum requirement. The second one, well, the third one actually, also deals with the board members on the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. And it simply adds, in addition to looking for diversity in the other areas already named, we should try to have diversity in income, primary language, and residential status. And I would urge you to accept that, because they simply say to the mayor, in appointing the members of the Board of Commissioners, we hope that you're not going to have people all who are from the same geographic district, that's already there, or all from the same racial or ethnic group, that's already there, but that you'll also look at that we have some diversity based on income, residential status, and what language they may have spoken when they were first born. I don't think either of those does anything but direct the mayor to try to have the broadest diversity on the Board of Commissioners. Finally, 32B asks the mayor to appoint a minimum number of 5 members, all who are currently community organizing experience, to recommend candidates to the mayor. Does not require the mayor to select those people, but it gives an opportunity in the selection process for people who are currently involved in community organizing to have some way of suggesting to the mayor what would be a good parameter for a general manager. These 3, we either have to vote up or down today. I would urge we vote them up, because the idea of having a neighborhood councils is an excellent idea, but people who do this are in my opinion, very special folks who understand how you organize people who may be reluctant to participate. My fourth one, D, includes actually asking in the duties that one of the duties be that the department see itself as trying to mitigate obstacles that might be to people participating in these various groups, and it suggests some of them, but not limits it to looking for how to deal with childcare, language translation, transportation to and from the meetings, and disability access. I have no problem with deferring that if you don't want to vote on it today, but I think that it is an appropriate duty. I support E through I as well, as I think all of them are additions which do not in any way change the central purpose of what we're trying to do here or the good work of the committee, but add the opportunity for others who are not able to be on that committee to have some input into what this will be launched as today. So I would urge an aye vote on all the amendments.
Ms. Galanter, because her machine's not working.
Thank you. I want to say again, I think the young lady from USC who testified is exactly right, and that this is something that works better organized from the bottom up than from the top down. Nevertheless, the people voted to do it backwards, and I'm going to support their decision to do it backwards. But I do have some specific questions concerning the ordinance and some of the amendments. And my first question is, will the Voting Rights Act apply to the composition of, well, I need somebody. I don't know if it's the city attorney or somebody else. Will the Voting Rights Act apply to the drawing up of neighborhoods?
Where's Erwin Simanowski when we need him?
That's not who I was intending to ask.
City attorney?
Nor is it whose opinion I want. Can I have somebody from the city attorney's office?
Yeah.
Okay.
Will the Voting Rights Act be implicated in what?
In the drawing of boundaries for neighborhood councils.
No, it should not.
If the Brown Act is, why wouldn't the Voting Rights Act?
Well, the Voting Rights Act isn't the same as the Brown Act. The Brown Act deals with legislative bodies and includes advisory bodies.
Right.
But the Voting Rights Act has to do with representation in terms of decisions. And
Right, but isn't this an attempt? I mean, I thought part of the purpose, really, I'm not being facetious.
No, I
This is a serious
understand.
question.
The advisory nature of the neighborhood councils is what keeps it out of, at this point, out of the Voting Rights Act.
Okay,
being
okay,
implicated.
thank you. That's what I wanted to know. All right, then I have a couple of questions in the amendments. Perhaps somebody can refresh my memory about how the job description, the qualifications necessary for the general manager of the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment would be set. Claudia, I may need you for this also. And the reason I ask, shall I ask it again? The reason I ask this question is that Ms. Goldberg's amendment 32B requires the appointing of a screening panel who have experience as community organizers to advise the mayor, which may be an independent act, but it would seem to me more efficient to ensure that in the description of the qualifications of who we're looking for to manage the department, that we seek somebody who has had community organizing experience. So could you just, let me run through my whole list, and then I'll come back. It's not a very long list, but I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time here. That's my question on 32B, related to 32B. On 32D, I think, Jackie, this one's a question for you. It says the department shall mitigate obstacles. How would it do that? And that may be it. Oh, yeah, and on 32G, I guess that is, my concern there is that some of the neighborhoods that we draw may, this is why I asked the Voting Rights Act question, some of the neighborhoods will probably be neighborhoods that don't have any commercial property in them. They're residential areas, and I don't want us to get into a situation where, in order to be sure that we are including all of the various types of people we thought of, we wind up drawing funny-looking districts to be sure to bring in, for example, commercial, educational, and nonprofit neighborhoods. I don't think that's what you intended.
No, can I respond just for half a second?
Yeah.
All right, 32G only pertains to the board for the whole city, and these are just
Okay,
suggestive of the
fine.
kind of interest.
Thank you. That answers
So it
that
doesn't-
one.
doesn't deal with that.
But you can see why I got a little alarmed there. All right, and, okay, that's it. So if you could, City Attorney, go back to my
Who's going to
I
question.
think your, Claudia Culling, City Attorney's Office, I think your first question related to appointment of
The general manager. What's the process for describing the qualifications necessary?
Yes, President, council member, members of the council, Tim McCosker, City Attorney's Office, to go back over some of the presentation that we had last time. The Article 9 of the charter becomes effective immediately. That is the only article that is immediately effective. What Article 9 provides is that the general manager shall be appointed pursuant to Section 508 of the charter. The appointment process is at Section B, or subsection B, that the Chief Administrative Officer of this department shall be appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the council, period. In fact, the charter does not provide for other opportunities for the city council to place pre-screening or pre-qualification mandates on the mayor's office.
Nor does it forbid it. I mean, if we, well, I'm sorry, excuse me for interrupting you. This is what I'm trying to figure out with respect to proposed Amendment B here. This would put into the ordinance a requirement that there be an advisory panel appointed that's not the city council, so everybody will be safe, they don't have to call us. Can we do that in the ordinance? What I think I hear you telling me is that we can't in the ordinance say the general manager, because somewhere the ordinance says the department shall have a general manager or a chief administrative officer.
Correct.
That we can't say that chief administrative officer shall be somebody with community organizing experience. Is that what you're telling me? We cannot do that?
That is correct. That would not be authorized or would be inconsistent with the charter. I think in addition what I'm saying...
It's not forbidden by the charter.
Correct. But when the name is presented to you, let's say that the B provision is adopted and the screening process is either utilized or not utilized by the mayor's office. Let's say it is not utilized by the mayor's office and a name is presented to you. That name was properly before you, even without using the screening process. The council then has the authority to confirm or not confirm. But it is not invalidly presented to you.
Well, then let me ask you a question that one of my constituents asked a panel I happened to sit on, and then I'll tell, after I hear your answer, I'll tell you what Mr. Chemerinsky's was. Just let me finish with this one question, and I'll sit down. What happens if, for example, we adopt Amendment B that says the mayor shall appoint a screening panel, and the mayor, whoever the mayor is at any given moment, decides not to do it? The question my constituent asked was, what recourse does he, as president of a homeowners group, have And Mr. Chemerinsky said he can file for a writ of mandate. Well, this is a man who files writs of mandate all the time, so I don't know that that's really the ideal solution. If we adopt this and the mayor chooses not to do it, are you telling me nobody can do anything about it? Except refuse to confirm?
Correct, except
Oh, this is
refuse
a
to
really
confirm.
good example of bottom-up participation, isn't it? All right, thank you.
Tim, did you, now I know Mr. Pacheco was on the Charter Commission, so he probably knows, but Mr. Padilla, are you fully understand what this neighborhood council thing is? You need an explanation. You're okay? All right, then. Mr. Holden, you have the floor.
Mr. President, members, what we're doing here today is a clear example of how you botch up legislation in government where not only the members, the legislators don't understand what the heck they're doing, but after they destroy the process to the extent that they have and you're doing today, the public won't understand it either. An effort was being made just Friday that we should hold this over until today. The city is over 100-plus years in existence, and we have not had anything in the charter that defines neighborhood councils. We've had city council members who represent 15 districts, and the neighborhoods get together and they elect them to represent them. But now we're going to have another layer of government, and the voters think that's what we need, and that's fine, except it was bunched up and clouded with other documents, other proposals in the charter reform. And charter sounds good, reform sounds good. But you know, change may not be good, although if they say you should have change, then have it. But change for the sake of change is not necessarily the best thing to do. But if that's what they want to do, let's begin the process. But as we begin the process, my God, let's do it right. A committee of 15 here today, and you wanted to do it Friday, and half of you don't understand all the proposed amendments or changes to this proposed charter. Can you believe that? And you're saying, let's go forward. Who are you trying to impress? Who are you trying to impress when you raise the water rates? Certainly not the consumer who's been on your back ever since. And then you have to have a different kind of program for the valley and one for the inner city and then for the people who are in need and on certain fixed incomes. You're bad legislators. You may be good people, but I know you're opposed to it, but you're bad legislators as a group. We all are as a group. And it just seemed to me, at least, that with all these amendments, and you're saying that's okay, you wanted to do it Friday. Sheer stupidity. Can be not classified as anything else. Gang rush approach. Mr. Bernstein, I understand what you're saying. After many years you served in the council. And for someone to try to make a political statement on their behalf by doing this to the people and against the people of this city at this time, rushing it the way they are, is wrong. Of course, it's why. But I would say to you that I support neighborhood council concept. I don't want anybody to think that we don't want participation on the part of the neighborhood people who are interested in working in the process. But my God, give them something they can understand and they can digest and they can work with. You're going to amend this again just like you did the water rates and the hillside clearance, and the list can go on, including the airport $30 million process. John, you didn't have nothing to do with that.
Mr. Hernandez.
Mr. President, members of the council, before you also is Amendment 32E, which basically deletes Section K item K of Section 22.801. But also included in that, I need to make a verbal amendment to the purposes under the duties of the department, and that's where the last sentence has a period. I'd like to continue by saying city departments by coordinating and involving the relevant city staff in integrated problem solving with neighborhood councils. So that basically should be added to that wording. And I want to explain my reasons why. You know, I've come to the realization that there are things that we can change and things that basically we're not going to change. The fact that about 9% of the voting population chose to pass this charter is not telling me that the majority of the people participated. In fact, 17% of the voters participated. That meant that basically 83% chose not to, and those are just the ones registered to vote. Now, so let's understand that we can't change that process. But why so many people chose not to participate, why so many people are disenchanted with government is, I think, why it's before us today. And I want to relate to what I call the gear method of organizing. In my district, you go to a community meeting and everybody yells at you. And that's part of the first gear. And you listen to all their complaints about crime and blight and so forth, and what they're talking about is a lack of city services. And the police have been there all along, but they're talking about the lack of city services. So what you hope to get out of the first meeting is basically a roster of who showed up and some kind of coordinated understanding of what the problems are. And it could be the street lights, the abandoned cars, the lack of street sweeping, and so forth. Then you set up a second meeting. Now you have a roster, and you ask people, and you go into your second gear, and you show up with all the department heads. And the department heads are going to explain to people that they're doing their job. But the people are going to explain to them, then why are my streets dirty? Why am I dealing with all these issues? Now, when they're in that second gear, what starts evolving is some leadership for that community group. I want you to understand that. And I, as a councilman, hold the departments accountable. I asked the police captain to explain how many officers he has on duty at 12 o'clock on Friday night, so that people understand the area of responsibility of the police department and crime. And I asked the Department of Street Maintenance to explain why the street sweepers are broken down and how they're going to deal with those issues. So now people see government beginning to respond to them. And we give these little pink slips that we ask them to fill out when they report something to a city department, and we want those slips brought back at the next meeting so that we know if the departments are responding to them or not. By the third gear, they're electing officers, and those officers are taking some leadership. And the fourth gear is providing them some kind of a small stipend so that they could develop a newsletter, a system of communicating with that membership, and have an ongoing system of keeping government accountable. That's how important the pink slips are. I'm explaining it to you because that's been my experience in organizing mass units in my district. But at the same time, every community I went to, whether it was Pico Heights, Chinatown, Lincoln Heights, or Highland Park, had a different way of organizing itself. In some instances, you had a homeowners association in place. In other instances, you had nothing in place. And that's why I asked that the duties and responsibilities of the department include city services, but it not be delineated. Because how you get there is how you're going to organize them. And that's part of why I'm asking that this motion be passed.
Thank you. Ms. Walters.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have some questions about some of these amendments, but first I need a procedural question. Are we going to vote on them with one vote, or are we going to vote on each one by number?
I believe that we're going to vote on them sequentially, one at a time.
Okay, that's fine. I'd like to point out the similarities between 32C and 32G. I think 32G is the more comprehensive. 32D says that the department shall mitigate obstacles to widespread community participation, including but not limited to child care, language translation, transportation to and from meetings, and disability access. I don't know what you have in mind when you talk about transportation to and from meetings, and I would move to delete that because I think the cost could go way up there, and it's not specific enough. I think that it needs to be more specific when you say including but not limited to. And so what would be the outer limits of that? On 32F, the amendment that I have submitted, I'd like to further amend that. It says that the board member shall be appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the city council and may be removed. I want to insert between removed and the word "and" by the mayor, and vacancies filled in accordance with the provisions of the city charter. So it's just adding another "by the mayor" after the word "removed," and that's according to the charter as it stands now. Thank you very much.
Ms. Miskowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to go back, I think, to the issues that Ms. Chick indicated and raised, and that is that this is just a starting point. This is an enabling ordinance that begins a process. I think some of the issues that have been addressed already have been handled, and that is that some of our attempt to further define and further make explicit is, in fact, not consistent with the Charter. And I think that's the pitfall that we're falling into as we come in with a number of these amendments, which are really, truly, I still believe, much more appropriate for the regulatory regulations that will be adopted by the board and put in place ultimately with our advice and participation as well. Even the ones that were recognized as being very much alike, 32C and 32G, start to define communities of interest. And if we leave it the way it is, with communities of interest not defined, it envelops everything. The more that we try to create the seriatim list, the more we are excluding. That's why I prefer leaving it the way it is. Members of the council, what is community? Community may be a group of property owners. In days of old, it was people who shared a laundry line. Today, it might include telecommunity. That's a whole new region of community. By trying to define it and list this serially, I think we are being exclusive. I think the beauty of the Charter and what is replicated by the language here today in the ordinance, it doesn't define communities of interest other than those that we have had tried and tested in terms of discriminatory policies of the past, ethnicity, gender, race, age, sexual orientation. I don't think we should go beyond that. So that's why I would not support 32C or G, because it tries to put us in place of defining for people what communities are. And leaving it as it is, a diversity of communities of interest, that says it all. On the other issue that I had some concern about was, I think, where the city attorney indicated that there was a conflict with the Charter in and of itself, and I think we've got to honor that. But in general, I think that we are attempting to go into too much detail in our ordinances. Most of what is in this, I think, is appropriate, and although there is the issue here on who the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners should comprise, that they should have community organizing experience, why shouldn't they have conciliatory experiences? A lot of our people who have worked with neighborhood justice centers and things like that are good. I can think of any number of things, and in fact, for those of you who might have looked at the bulletin for the general manager for Department of Neighborhood, there are a lot of other skills that both the neighborhood general manager and perhaps the commissioner should have. Again, I don't think we should list it in an ordinance, because any attempt to list it is by its very nature going to be exclusive. So that's why I want to go back to the general empowering, enabling ordinance as I think presented by the committee, which was, I think, very, very good. I have no problem with Ms. Walters' clarifications, because basically when it says something is done by the Charter, those who know the Charter know what it means, but by saying appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the council, just explicitly says what that means, and I have no problem with that. And as my motion of last week indicated, I have no problem with Mr. Hernandez's motion, which I think, again, was broad in its definition, but broad to mean all-inclusive, rather than by our attempt in most of these other motions to be inclusive, which I really think is narrowing. So my motion, again, is that we adopt the ordinance as it was presented, including the amendment by Mr. Hernandez, which is whichever one it is, E, and Ms. Walters, which just add the clarification of the mayor and the Charter by way of appointment and confirmation.
All right, thank you. Mr. Pacheco?
Right.
I wanted to comment, Mr. President, fellow council members, on the Hernandez and Chick sort of internal debate about K and the purposes. My comment is basically that under K, I have some concerns that really go to the heart of what neighborhood councils are about. For me, the idea that city administrators or bureaucrats would be acting as advocates for the neighborhood councils undermines the whole goal of starting from the bottom up, the process of empowering people. And I also have the concern about coordinating and involving the relevant city staff in integrated problem solving. I'm not sure if we want to empower a department with the ability to summons other department staff into community meetings, because at that point, I believe it would undermine our authority as council members in the process of delivering city services to our constituents. So I really believe that K as it stands should be deleted. I do not support the movement of the last sentence to the purposes. I'm not sure procedurally where that puts that oral acceptance by Mr. Hernandez as the maker of the motion and myself as the seconder of the motion, but I am not in agreement with that movement. So I do support the overall ordinance as it is listed right now. I will not be supporting any of the other amendments except for Ms. Walters, and ask that the ordinance be passed as it stands with the two exceptions of the Hernandez original motion and the Walters second motion.
Thank you. Members of the council, I'm going to introduce somebody who is an inspiration to a lot of people. I'm sure you realize we have a roast every year for the American Diabetes Association, and the inspiration behind that roast is Laura Burkhoff. Laura, where are you? I wanted to introduce Laura. She's the one that's the inspiration, and you know, Arnie Burkhoff, her father started this thing 2 years ago. I was the first one that was on the griddle, and then they had some guy from the county, I forget his name. But then Hal's next, but she is a diabetic and takes shots 3 or 4 times a day. And so we just thought we should introduce her. I'm glad that she's visiting City Hall.
Thank you.
Mr. Padilla?
Thank you, Mr. President. Stand to echo a lot of what Councilmember Misikowski had to say in terms of the focus of this discussion. The ordinance, in my opinion, is not to get into the details of the plan which is to be created. It's not to get into the details of job descriptions for staff or for commissioners, but simply to create the department and set in motion the process of creating neighborhood councils. I support the ordinance as written with the amendments that Mr. Pacheco also supports, and call my colleagues' attention to the checks and balances which already exist. As we go forward with the creation of the commissions and the plan and anything else, we have the community which will always make their voice heard, but I especially remind my colleagues that whatever plan, whatever decisions are made are subject to council approval and will return to this body for final approval and further discussion, I'm sure, and will be part of the discussion in committee with the Charter Reform Implementation Committee, which has yet to be established. Thank you.
Mr. Burnson.
You know, you're new and you're young, so you don't understand the fact that, excuse me, you haven't had the experience that we've had here with these types of things. The checks and balances are not there. You said the checks and balances are there. They're not there. That's the reason the questions are being raised. The questions are being raised, for example, about who qualifies to sit on a neighborhood council. Somebody from Santa Monica come into your community, and they can the way it was written. If they don't have if somebody works in an area or has a business or owns property in an area, yes, they are a stakeholder. Or if they're involved in an organization that's involved in that community, a church, a college, a school, whatever the case may be, these are people that are entitled. This is something that's not spelled out in this ordinance. These are things that need to be brought to the attention. That's why there are amendments. You know, this thing was brought to us in a hurry. And I don't know why it was brought to us in such a hurry. Yes, we need to act. The people have spoken. We need to create neighborhood councils. Some of us created them a long time ago, and we know how they work. And Mr. Ridley Thomas is shaking his head because he's one of the few members of this council that created them when he came here. So there are things and there are pitfalls in this thing. We are ultimately responsible to the people. We're responsible to make sure these neighborhood councils work right. And if they don't work right, it's going to be because there are things that are not spelled out. That's why we're trying to do these things. That's why this really should have had a little greater oversight than just one weekend or whatever the case may be when it was brought to the council on Friday, so that a ad hoc committee of people who have dealt with some of these things understand that these things need to be at least presented. I know they're going to come back. You're absolutely correct that they're going to come back to the council in form of an ordinance. But unless we do point these things out now, we're liable to miss them next time. We need to do these things. We need to make sure that these things work. Just to say that we're going to set up neighborhood councils and let it go at that, we have people that come before us on planning issues for the various districts that don't have anything even remotely close to your district or my district, and talk on those issues. Now, according to the way this thing written, they can be stakeholders. Somebody from Ventura County can be a stakeholder in your district or my district. So the point is, these are little details that need to be spelled out. I think the council members have brought these things out because they are concerned about it. It isn't that they don't want neighborhood councils. It's because they feel it is important to do it right. Now, frankly, I'm going to tell you, I've had 20 years of experience with neighborhood councils that deal with every facet of things that we deal with around this council. And I intend to continue to deal with these neighborhood councils that I have. I don't care what the others do. We'll listen to them, of course. The people want them set up. 16% of the people that are registered voted. I'm not sure they gave it an informed vote, but they voted, and we have to listen. But I will not discontinue my neighborhood councils. Marez, Tony, Candido, who serves on one of them, and I think there may be some other people out here. We're going to continue to listen to our community, but we want to do it the right way. That's all. So I wasn't trying to diminish your comment. I just want to point out the fact to you that this ordinance is not perfect, and there are things in there that need to be looked at carefully before we rush to judgment.
Thank you, Mr. Burnson. Mr. Wax.
Mr. President, members of council, I think this has been a good discussion, and I think it's important to once again sort of take stock of what this does and what this doesn't do. This does not create neighborhood councils. What this does is create a Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and a commission who will be under the charter given 1 year to come up with a plan of neighborhood councils. And that department and commission, Mr. Burnson, have to, under the charter, have been appointed in 120 days. That is the rush. They will then be given a year. And then they will submit to this council, which is given an additional 6 months, to approve or modify that plan. So it will be a full 18 months before we in fact have neighborhood councils, a plan for neighborhood councils, which take into account not only the issues raised today, but the endless number of issues that will be raised by the people in the neighborhoods themselves as the department is mandated to go out into the neighborhoods and communities in developing this plan. Secondly, this does not cast judgment on existing groups, whether they be Mr. Burnson's neighborhood councils, Mrs. Walters' neighborhood watches, someone else's homeowner association, or someone else's chamber of commerce. This recognizes and welcomes all of the existing groups, but it does go farther. It does seek to expand citizen participation. If people were happy with the way things are today, they wouldn't overwhelmingly want to change it. This will build on what's happened today and expand it. And it will not come from the top down. The whole fundamental issue of this is that these are mandates that are supposed to come from people and their neighbors and their communities, not from City Hall, no matter how well-intentioned that may be. Finally, the real test is not today. Today, you've got to do this. The charter says you get 120 days to do it. If you don't do it, the mayor probably can, under the charter, go ahead and do it anyway. The real test is going to be what happens, members of council, when this Department of Neighborhood and this commission comes back to us with a plan. Will you approve that plan? Will you adopt an early notification ordinance that allows the neighborhood councils not only to discuss issues in their neighborhood, but citywide issues like water and power rates and subsidies and other things that affect all of the taxpayers of the city? Will you give it the resources it needs to organize the communities and to hire community organizers, to have places to meet, to communicate with the people in the areas on a regular basis? Will you give it what it needs to succeed or not? You will have to come to that test later. I am hopeful that in the process of building the plan and working with communities to do it, we will also build the support group that will assure that this council will in fact, provide the needed resources at the end of the line. So this is not the end of this. This is the beginning, but it is an important, historic step in opening city government up to the people of the city in a greater way than has occurred in the past, and it behooves every one of us to pass it. And I think the best way to do it is, as Ms. Pizakowski, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Checo have mentioned, to pass the enabling ordinance and the couple of amendments
Thank you, Mr.
complement that, and to take the more specific changes and send them to the ad hoc committee to be discussed with all of the other issues that will be raised during the process.
Mr. Fuhr.
I move the previous question. It was an act of mercy, John.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have the votes, because not everybody's spoken twice. So we'll go on Ms. Goldberg.
Actually, I just wanted to respond. As to the similarities between C and G, I agree with Ms. Walters. I like G better, and I'll withdraw C. And I'd like to add, though, to G, with the permission of the maker, the words income and primary language as just considerations. And he accepts that. As to D, the goal of this, and I think it's not as clear, and I'll add 2 words, shall attempt to mitigate. Let's add the word shall attempt to. The idea is that when we're trying to get people to come, there should be some notion that the department will help people find rides if they don't know how to get to a meeting and they don't have a car. Shall help them try to figure out who can maybe set up cooperative child care during the meeting. It didn't mean that they have to provide it. And if that's not understood, I'll change that. But the idea is that it shall be the duty of the department. And the reason the list is not exhaustive is because in every area there may be different obstacles to participation. But it simply says that it is one of the duties of this department to try to mitigate those obstacles to widespread participation. I don't think it is an inappropriate amendment, and I would urge an aye vote. I would disagree with one of the things that's been said by several of you on that side of the aisle, and that is you're saying all this can wait. Well, see, I agree with you except for 2 things, and that is a general manager and a board is going to be selected after this passes. If we don't say now what we hope will be some of the considerations in making those selections, then when they come and I vote no, it would be appropriate to ask me, why didn't you say so? And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say we should look at these things, Mr. Mayor, not just you, but all future mayors, in deciding who will be on the board and who the general manager of this department will be. The rest, I agree with you, can wait and should wait. But the amendments that I and several others are talking about are saying to the mayor, who is going to make these appointments, but who is going to bring them here for confirmation, we think these are important considerations about the diversity of the board, the experiences of the board, and the experiences of the general manager. And so that's why these are coming up now and not waiting till later. Because if I think that community organizing is important, and I think community organizing is important in the Department of Neighborhoods, if it's not important there, where else will it be important? If we don't ask for that now, and they come back with 7 people, none of whom have community organizing experience, whose fault is that going to be? It's going to be ours for not saying we think that's an important criteria. So that's all I'm asking you to do, is to send a message to the mayor by saying, we believe these things are important in the selection of a general manager and in the selection of the board members. The rest, you're right, absolutely, can wait until we hear at the end of the year's process what all of the various community-based groups and organizations and individuals have told this board, have told this new general manager what they think the individual neighborhood council should be like. So I urge you to think about that as we come to a vote.
Mr. Pacheco.
The points I was going to make were already made. I pass.
Galanter.
I want to say with respect to the efforts to amend here that I would hope that those of you who worked so hard on the original ordinance would view these in the spirit of constructive collaboration. If we wanted to make amendments to tear it apart, they wouldn't look like this. And I mention that in part because I have just brought in, finally it's reached your desk, 32L, which affects the ordinance only by asking that a phrase be added to section 22.804 to require that the general manager of the department provide a monthly status report to the full council on the implementation of the whole program. And the reason that I'm proposing that is that if we're going to encourage people who may not yet have become involved to get involved in neighborhood councils, I think we want them. I'm not so worried about their being involved in the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I do think once we're creating neighborhood councils, we want to encourage people to be aware of the program. Several people have mentioned the very low turnout in the election, so that we know that it was something like 16% of the registered voters, which is only a percentage of the residents of the city who actually voted for this. And if you add everybody in who voted against it as well, it's still not enough people to say we really have neighborhood participation. If we do not add this requirement, all of the reporting and all of the really interesting stuff will take place in committee. If it is done here, the committee is still, of course, perfectly free to do everything, and will have a big responsibility to do the follow-up work on all of this. But I think that by requiring reports to the full council, we have the opportunity, because of the television, to make the progress of the whole program more accessible to people throughout the city. And I would encourage your support for Amendment 32L.
Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Mr. President, members of the council, I rise to essentially second the point Ms. Galanter just made with respect to the report back. I would say that this is a part of the committee report where we ask for reports to the Government Efficiency Committee. I interpret this to be an extension of that says to the full council, and you know that if it goes to government efficiency, it would eventually get to council. But to explicate that point, I think, is one that is worth supporting. Additionally, I rise to make the point that the way in which we dispose of this matter, in my view, is very important. And I trust that we can do so in a way that supports, bolsters public confidence rather than to erode it. It is precisely the opposite message that I think we want to communicate, members of the council, to those who are really excited about the prospects of neighborhood councils, no matter how we define them. And I appreciate full well that they will be different in various parts of the city, and they ought to be. We established that very early on. I repeat the point, the flexibility in the context of uniformity is important. But let us not erode public confidence. Let us do what we intend to do with these neighborhood councils, that is to communicate, inculcate community empowerment. That's our precise objective. I do not think that everyone is at one with respect to the issue of neighborhood councils and our community empowerment. That's rather clear to me, and I do take the suggestions that are made by a number of people that are amendments to be helpful in one sense, and those that are not are seen for what they are. But the message here has to be that we are prepared to move forward, and not in an exhaustive way, because we cannot answer all of the questions today, but we can cause this process to take a substantial step forward. We have been working on this for 2 years. This body adopted moving neighborhood councils forward prior to the charter having been approved by the voters. And to the extent that that is the case, I see no reason for us to do anything other than move this in a way that we can be proud and answer all the remaining questions as we continue to detail the matters in the operating plan. So I rise to simply support the committee report. The amendments that I would be supportive of have been delineated by Mr. Hernandez, Ms. Chick, Ms. Walters, and finally, Ms. Galanter. Thank you very kindly.
Mr. Padilla?
Thank you, Mr. President. With all due respect, let me remind this body that the voters approved the creation of neighborhood councils to be overseen by the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, not to be overseen by this city council. And if we cannot trust in a manager and a staff to oversee in a good faith creation and execution of these neighborhood councils, then we do not have reform in this city.
Mr. Holden?
Mr. President, members, it's also been reported to us, as if we didn't know, that 87% of the voters in this city were obviously very happy the way things were going. Not to say that reform is not in order, but they liked it, and they said, we abstain from making any changes, so we're not going to participate in that process. They're obviously happy. So therefore, 16, 17% say we are going to participate. And even of those, it was not a substantial majority. It was a majority. But I would say that if you really don't think you can do a good job as a council person to satisfy all the conditions that's required upon us by our constituents, then let's give real power to the neighborhood councils. The mayor is an executive branch, and the taxpayers pay for that. We're the legislative branch. Taxpayers pay for this branch of government. You've got the city attorney, the controller. And now there's another layer of government that some of you say there's been a mandate that the taxpayers say they want, but yet is only advisory. If you know good as a council person, it's still advisory. And if you're good, and hopefully I think that most of you are going to try to reach that good standard, it's still advisory on every major issue that those council are concerned about. Maybe we ought to put something in this proposal that you cannot act until the council have acted. We got to put a stipulated date on that. But all the matters that of controversy, which we'll define, should go to the council first, and they should have teeth in it, and your vote should be according to the action taken by the council. Then you're putting your mouth where you put your vote. Sure, your power is going to be eroded, whatever that is. Maybe you don't have it in the first place. But the fact of the matter is that it's called truth in lending, truth in spending. How truthful really are you really when you talk about you want to give power to the neighborhood? Now that's going to be a proposal coming before you. It's not a bait. You got to bite, because I'm going to put it up there. I'm going to put it before you and see how committed you really are. It's going to be there.
Mr. Hernandez?
Mr. President, members of the council, I think I've been a proponent of neighborhood empowerment since before I got elected to office, and there's no question that I believe in the principle, and I want to see the principle adopted. Part of what's bothersome to me in this discussion and this debate is the agendas, and our reality that we all have agendas. I've disclosed to you and openly that my agenda after 2 years is to get out of this world of politics. Mr. Wax, for example, has disclosed to everybody that he plans to run for mayor. There's no question in my mind, Mr. Wax, and again, I haven't taken a position on your Chief of Staff, Greg Nelson, but there's no question that he wants to be the department head of this department. And so those agendas is part of the concern I'm hearing that is interfering with this process. You see, if a deal's been cut for your person to become the department head while you're running for mayor, that confuses what the role of the department is. And I think it's important that we basically deal with that reality. I think a lot of the amendments, and again, Mr. Padilla talked about the will of the voters that participated in the election. I think that it's important that we disclose those agendas and that we deal with it from the perspective of what we really want to do is develop a department that allows for community organizing, that allows for empowering of communities, and for them to have a greater voice in this thing called local government. And that's why I think you're seeing all these amendments. Now, saying that to everybody, I wanted me to basically be someone who proposes that we set aside those agendas today, and that we enact the ordinance that's before us with all its amendments. And the reason I say that is because I've heard time and time again that this is a beginning of a process, and that that process is going to allow for change. Now, I'm trying to reach a consensus, and to me, it's important that as a council, we have a consensus. And so if we're setting aside our agendas, and we adopt all the amendments that are before us, I think we can have a united voice in that direction. Knowing that when the department is formed, knowing that when the department head is selected, and knowing that when the commission is selected, there's going to have to be room for change. And that's basically what I wanted to bring to the table right now, and just ask us to pass the amendments, and let's move on, because our agendas are going to be there whether we want them or not, and the reality is, we all hope to empower the communities in this process.
Mrs. Misakowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, in the same vein as Mr. Hernandez indicated, my motion does not denigrate the other motions that are in there. It basically says that they should go back, and in fact, I have no problem with them being considered as policy, and perhaps immediately after we pass this ordinance, which was as presented essentially, that we ask the Government Efficiency Committee to come back with the policy guidelines and the policy directive that the council itself will be using, and most of these amendments embody that. The only issue, and I appreciate Ms. Goldberg's concern about the issues on the Neighborhood Commission right now and the general manager, but I think we've already been told that 32B, which says that the department, that the mayor shall do certain things, is not allowed. The charter specifically precludes that. So we have it in conflict, and we've been advised by our attorney that we can't adopt B. We can write to the mayor. Those of us individually can inform the mayor that we'd like to see him consider that. But again, the notice is already out. The deadline for responding to the search group is July 23rd, very short time away. So it's already out and happening. And I believe that a lot of the issues that we're talking about, and I think others have mentioned, that these are going to be some of the guidelines that we ourselves as councils, either collectively or individually, are going to be looking at in either our ability to confirm a general manager or our ability to confirm the commissioners. And I think that message is being conveyed loud and clear. But and I think this is not being rushed through. As is indicated, if you look at the report, the first motion that generated the committee to start looking at this was 1996, and they've been meeting intensively, in fact, talking about all the other cities that they've gone to, all the other areas where neighborhood councils have been in place to see what works, what doesn't, all the different models that can be created. This is something that's been very diligent on the part of the committee and some of their staff, and I think that it's not rushed through. If anything, if they started meeting intensively 3 or 4 months ago when a motion came in at the time the charter was first prepared, talking about the neighborhood council, and it's been at least 3 or 4 months of very intensive work at the committee level that a lot of our staffs were able to follow. So again, this is an empowering, enabling process. It's a beginning. All of the other issues I think are more appropriate as policy, are good ideas, but need not be in the ordinance, and that's what my motion recommends.
Chair recognizes Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Mr. President, I move the previous question on the entire matter.
Is there a second to that? I'd ask for a no vote. I'd ask for a no vote. Open the roll on the previous question, ask for a no vote. There's only 2 more speakers. That's okay. Do we have a motion and a second? Open the roll, close the roll.
9 ayes, 5 noes.
Well, that didn't pass. Mr. Wax hasn't spoken twice. Well, you have the floor.
Let me just, I did vote for the previous question because I thought Mr. Ridley Thomas had wisdom. I want to just make two comments to Mr. Hernandez. I think I needed to. You're right, but there's nothing that you're disclosing. When I ran for mayor 6 years ago, my whole platform was neighborhood councils. And what I saw as a need then, I see even as a greater need now. So it's nothing secret. Second, as to Mr. Nelson, you are also right, and I think he'd be fantastic. And believe me, from my standpoint, I would much rather him stay as my right hand because it's going to hurt me personally a lot more for him to leave me at a time I most need him than that, but I think he'd be great, and so I fully support it. And finally, I just wanted to comment particularly on Ms. Culling for the efforts that they have given. We would have been chastised and criticized had we delayed in not met the deadline. This is the first ordinance to implement, the first of many, many, many ordinances to implement the charter. We want it to be right out of the box. We did a lot of work to get ready for this, and Ms. Culling pulled it all together so we could have it here today. Had we taken the opposite approach, we would have been equally chastised by others for dragging our feet, for not being committed, etc. So, you know, in politics, after 20 years, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. We're doing what we believe is right. It was unanimous from our committee, and I think that I can sense by the majority of comments here that you're on that same wavelength, and that but we just have to establish now a willingness to see this through and work together, or all of us will look terrible in the eyes of the voters. So let us just hope that this begins a process where we can see this through to its implementation, and then ultimately that brings about the reforms that people wanted it to bring about, because the real test in the end is not even going to be so much whether we do it, but whether what we do brings about what people want. But we've at least got to give it that chance. And fine, that's it. Thank you, Mr.
Bernson.
I think we've belabored this about as far as we can go. I just want to add one comment. You know, the comment was made that the people voted for neighborhood councils, not for the city council to do this. The people also elected us to look out for them. And we care about our neighborhoods, we care about our communities, and we want to make sure that a system that has worked, because this is still one of the best cities in the world, our city government is the cleanest, and it works. We want to make sure that it isn't torn down by somebody who just has concerns about their future. So I want to make that very clear, and so people understand that I'm not against neighborhood councils. In fact, I created neighborhood councils. The speaker just spoke a moment ago and said he ran for office on the basis of doing that. Why haven't you done it? No, everybody, other people in this council have done it, but you haven't done it. And yet you're going to stand up here and tell us that we should do it. Well, some of us have done it quite well, Mr. Wax, and we resent the pushing, and I particularly resent the fact you didn't want to give me an opportunity to speak on this subject. I would urge an aye vote on all the amendments. Let's go forward with this thing. We need to do it, and we need to be very careful about how we do this so we protect the things, the institution, the city, our districts, and the community that have elected us to look out for them.
All right, Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Mr. President, the previous question, please.
See, there's no one else wants to be heard, so we'll impose the previous question. So what do we have first? We have, I think,
We have a procedural motion. Ms. Miskowski is 32M.
What does it say?
It's to adopt as presented by committee the ordinance, including amendments 32E and 32F, and all other amendments to refer to the ad hoc committee. 32E as amended.
They don't. Okay, prepare the roll on this. Tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 6 noes.
All right, that's been approved. Okay, the other motions will go to committee, to the charter committee.
Can that be very quick?
Yes, just as soon as I name it. And then whoever the chair. Sure.
Am I on? So these go back to committee. The ordinance goes
All
forward.
those except the two.
Right. So they all go to committee. The ordinance goes forward. If and when the
No,
committee...
the ordinance,
We're about to vote on the ordinance.
yeah, the ordinance, first of all, it's been withheld, so it'll go over a week.
Okay, but let me ask my question anyway. The ordinance gets adopted without all those other amendments, which go back to committee. When the if and when the committee brings those forward, then we just do them as a straight amendment to the ordinance.
Right.
John, another point of order, please. I think that the reason that the ordinance itself was not going to be voted on now is that it was not unanimous to adopt Ms. Mizikowski's motion. But I think that if we were to have the ordinance before us, given that vote, it would in fact get unanimous support today. Because after all, the motion moves the ordinance positively. All not voting today does is defer for the next time the vote. I think it's an important message for those of us who support the Department of Neighborhoods moving forward as rapidly as possible to vote on that today. And I would ask you to do so.
Okay.
And then the amendments can come back.
Can they bring them back in a week?
Well, I don't know if they can bring them back in a week because the committee hasn't been created yet. Okay, but Mr. Fuhrs asked that we vote on the
Mr.
ordinance.
President, on that motion, on his proposal, I think the idea is when it comes back next week, you'll see the ordinance in its final form, totally printed.
Well, the only thing is that he wants to vote on the ordinance.
It'll
And
be
if there's one
withheld.
no vote, it goes over a week.
It's going to go over a week anyway. It'll be withheld and will not be unanimous.
Point of order, Mr. President.
What is your point?
Each of the motions, as they were held last week, were written in form so that the ordinance could be presented today as amended. That's the way the language was put. My motion was to move the ordinance as amended by the language specifically presented by the city attorney. So my interpretation is that the ordinance was approved today but held over 1 week because we don't have unanimity with the two amending motions that were part of it and attached that we voted on.
Point of order. Point of order.
What is your point?
If we to have a unanimous vote today, we could simply adopt all the motions also, all the amendments. They're going to go to the Director of Neighborhoods anyway to come back in some form to us.
It's not going to go to the Director of the Neighborhoods. It's going to go to the Charter.
Well, I understand, but ultimately
Ultimately is a little time away. Okay. All right. Mr. Fuhrer asked we vote on the ordinance, so prepare the roll on the ordinance. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 3 noes.
So that ordinance goes over 1 week. Next item.
Mr. Chair, just so I can be clear so that our office can draft these, this is with all of the amendments that were submitted?
No. All
Okay.
amendments except Mr.
Okay,
Mr.
so it was
Hernandez and Mrs. Walters.
Ms. Mizikowski's, okay, thank you.
It's Amendment 32E as amended in 32F.
Okay. All right, the next item.
Item 34, called special.
Mr. Holden, you call 34 special?
I didn't call it special, but someone did. I do want to talk about it, so let's find out who called it special. No, you go ahead.
All right, Mr.
Mike, call it
Fuhrer.
special?
I have two questions on 34. And the two questions are these. Shh. First, as we move forward this contract, are we assuring that, especially in transit-dependent neighborhoods of our city, the transit shelters are going to be present? There has been this inequity that throughout the city, especially in neighborhoods where people ride the bus most frequently, they have to stand out on the street in the rain or in the the hot sun, as opposed to assuring that every neighborhood, particularly where people ride the bus, we have these shelters. So does the contract contain a provision to the effect that these would be distributed in that manner?
Turn the sound up there.
Try one.
President and Mr. Fuhrer, the members of the council, there's actually two provisions that I think address that. One is that the there's a provision that 25% of the bus shelters will be decided by the city council members themselves, 1. 2, 50% have to be decided mutually between the contractor and the city, and 25% by the contractor based on wanting to get advertising revenue. Secondly, there is a discrepancy, as you said, between various parts of the city of a rather significant amount. What we have suggested is that difference be reduced by 50%, as I recall. In other words, the divergence between various areas of the city, that difference between one area and another area has to be reduced by 50%. So over the life of the 400 bus shelters.
What is the life of the contract during which that'll happen?
It's the addition of maximum of 400 shelters, and it will be January 1st, 2003.
All right, well, I'm thinking
March
about
2003.
March 31st, 2003 is when it ends.
Well, I'm thinking about the answer. I'm asking the question before my time expires. There are neighborhoods in the city where specific plans govern, among other things, where signage can be. Does this contract, rather, enable areas with specific plans to continue to enforce their prohibitions on certain signage and advertising, including that which might pertain to these kinds of shelters in their neighborhood?
There are provisions for non-revenue generating shelters to be built, but they would be paid for by the entity requesting the shelter, but there is a provision in the contract to allow for that.
I guess I'm confused. There's a specific plan area X.
Right.
Outdoor says we want to put a bus shelter with advertising that contains the following things there. The specific plan governs or not? Can the specific plan be enforced against the efforts of Outdoor, whoever is this contract with, to place advertising in a neighborhood where it's precluded by the plan?
The city controls the placement of all shelters, so Outdoor doesn't get to make a unilateral decision where any shelter goes.
Does it
So from
require a
that
variance
perspective-
from the plan in order to put in such advertising in neighborhoods where it's precluded by plans? So we'll go through the land use process?
I do not believe it is required to go through the land use process, but there is a City of Los Angeles approval that is required for the placement of any
See,
shelter.
what I want to avoid, we're so lousy at enforcing the rules in the city generally. I really want to avoid the situation in which neighborhoods which have plans have to take assertive action to enforce them because they're not automatically being enforced against a contractor who's seeking to produce revenue in an affluent area.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Well,
those are the two
basically-
issues. Equity and specific plans are, on my mind, on this contract.
Okay. I think equity's been...
Mrs. Walters.
Council members, this is a report that has come through committee, Public Works Committee, and there was a lot of labor involved to get this thing out. We're still under contract with the company, and we feel that this is the best way to solve this problem and move forward to a date when this contract ends, and we will definitely have another contract. The amendments that I have offered this morning are amendments that basically talk about a division of the monies that we did not speak to in committee. We would amend the ordinance. If you look at the amendment, item number 3 would create a special fund to provide that half of the transit shelter program revenue shall be deposited in the special fund and they be divided equally among all council districts for expenditure on transit improvements and services. When you look at item number 1, it talks about the rate at which these bus benches or bus shelters are to be installed. Beyond that, I think it takes us to a point of completion. This has been hanging fire for years, and it's time to get this off the desk and enacted and moved. And I think that with the council office involvement in selecting the stops where the shelters will go, it clearly gives the discretion to the council member to determine where the bus ridership is highest and where they're most needed. I urge unanimous vote.
Mr. Burnson?
Yes, I don't think there's any question, there have been people that have said that we have to go out for a new RFP and all that, but I don't think there's any question that the option in the contract definitely provides for them to exercise that, provided they meet certain criteria. My concern is, what is the criteria and how is it being distributed? And I think Mrs. Walters has addressed part of that. But, for example, Mr. Padilla has the lowest number of bus shelters in the city, and my district is next. Now, I don't exactly call that equal distribution. Cal State Northridge, with over 30,000 students, has no bus shelter, okay? Just to give you an example. So this has been based upon economics, which we can understand because they have to make it pay, but somehow there has to be a better distribution of these new shelters that are going to be imposed as part of this compliance with the option. And I'd like to see a list of those locations before I act on this thing, because I want to make sure that my district and Mr. Padilla's district and other districts that don't have representation with appropriate numbers in areas that need them, that they're going to be taken care of. And I would suggest, I'd like to act on this, but could we require them to come back with a list within a certain period of time and give us a list of those to be approved by the council?
Certainly. I think if you, but I would recommend we move ahead with the contract.
Okay, I'm willing to do that, but I'm going to make,
one of the basic points of the negotiations with this company was that the very problem you have discussed, and that was, in my response to Mr. Fuhrer, was that there is a wide divergence between various parts of the city and how many bus shelters there are, and that divergence has to be reduced.
How are we going to, what I'd like to move is that they present a list to this council within, let's say...
60 days.
60 days? Why not 30 days? When is this contract extended? From what point to what point?
Year 2003.
From
March.
when? From when? When does it
Right now.
expire? Okay, so right now.
Right.
Okay, let's say let's give them 60 days.
And the point is that I think there's
Let me finish my motion, okay? Within 60 days to be approved by the city council. And that would be my amendment to that motion, so that we can assure that we have some equity in the distribution of these new facilities.
That's fine.
Can I have a second on that?
Mr. Hernandez?
Mr. Deaton, could you explain to me why we didn't put this out to RFP?
Well, I think that I'd like the city attorney to explain that. I think there's difficulty.
Yeah, no, but I want to know why we didn't do it. I mean, many of us have been talking about the disparity of bus shelters. And if you look at our maps of people who don't own automobiles, the reality is where people don't own cars, except in Mr. Burnson's district, is where we have the least number of bus shelters. The people who are public dependent transit, who basically need public transportation and use buses, are the areas where you have your least number of shelters. It also happens to be the headquarters of the two competing companies, and I'm just asking, how come we as a city did not negotiate with both companies to see who would give us the best deal?
Well, I think there's two problems. I think the city attorney can discuss the whole contractual relationship we have with the existing contractor and the difficulty of getting out of that contract, number one. Number two, I was asked to sit down with the company by the chair of the committee with a list of problems, not the least of which was the divergence, the income, the selection of where they would be located, a whole host of issues, and I think this contract resolves all those. It also provides, on an annual basis, a little over $1 million of revenue to the city that we won't get, and if we proceed to go to RFP, it'll take a minimum of a year.
Okay, I got, this is my time, I'm running out of time.
Notwithstanding the legal issues.
So I know the city attorney is going to answer that. Now, city attorney, in answering that question, can you also explain to us how it is that the previous contract you negotiated with the existing company is not enforceable in terms of the commitment they made for the additional 1,500 bus shelters that they never put in? So I need those two questions answered before I'm willing to vote on this issue.
The contract didn't require 1,500 shelters. It said that they could build up to 1,500 shelters. It wasn't a requirement. They have, according to my reading of the contract, they are in full compliance with all the terms and conditions of the contract. You have an existing contract which is set to expire March 31st of 2000. There is the potential that they could build additional shelters and exercise 3 additional years, option years that are set on the existing contract. If they were to do that, we would basically have the existing contract with the existing revenue with 300 potential or 250 additional shelters, but no increase in revenue, no ADA compliance, no distribution, equity distribution as we have set forth in the amendment, and no amenities relative to the emergency telephones, no upgrading of the
And that
existing
expires in
lighting.
March of 2000?
Pardon?
That expires in March of 2000?
I said
2000.
it potentially expires in March of 2000, but they could
What is the
exercise.
fastest we could put a new RFP out?
They could exercise an option and hold us into this existing contract until 2003, which is exactly what this amendment does.
Okay. And is that an exclusive for them only?
No, it is not an
So
exclusive.
we could also sign with other companies?
No, we could not, the option is not exclusive, but no, we cannot sign with another company.
Ms. Goldberg.
Yes, I was sent a packet of material unsolicited, so I have no idea of the material of what is true and is not, but there are some interesting things, and I'd like to ask the questions from it. What this says is that that Outdoor Systems is asking for an extension, but did not disclose that on May of 1999, it was sold this contract to CBS. Is that true or not true?
It is true that they were sold in the day that it was announced, they announced to us.
Okay.
So they were just,
They were
in
not
other words,
required, they were not required to tell us if they were selling this off?
They didn't sell it. They were bought out.
They were bought.
It was a
Purchased.
sale. They were purchased.
Okay.
and they notified us that they had been
Does
purchased the day that
CBS
happened.
also own Transit Systems, Inc., which has a contract on all the buses in the MTA?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not aware. I'm not.
This says in January of 1982, a contract was given for 1,250 bus shelters. In August of 1982, the contract was amended to add 1,250 bus shelters, subject to a contingent that all 2,500 bus shelters would be completed in 5 years. Is that true or not true?
That is not true.
So it's not true that they were supposed to be completed within 5 years?
Correct. There was no guaranteed number of shelters to be built under the existing contract.
Okay. So we have a contract with no guarantee of any shelters being built.
Well, there were a minimum number of shelters that had to be built. Those
what
have
was
been
that
built.
number?
I believe it was 800. And understand, this
So
is...
in a city of this size, we have had a 10-year contract. Is this 10 years or 15 years now? Since 82, I guess it's longer
No,
than that.
no, it was 80.
That's 17 years since 82.
It was not, the contract, I don't believe, was signed in
So
82.
you don't believe, but you're not sure?
I don't have it in front of me, council member.
But we're about to
The original
extend the
contract was in the
contract?
late 80s. The original contract was
Okay.
signed in the late 80s.
Okay.
This company was not the contractor in the late
Right, but
80s.
the contract has been sold each time, right? I mean, the company has been sold?
Companies have, successors have bought out the existing contract and have merged and acquired other companies, and so the parent company has changed over the years. Yes, this
But
is
has the
third time.
contract changed since 1982?
No, the contract was not a 1982 contract. This contract was originally signed, I believe, in 1987.
And so in 1987, well, that's what this said. This said in 5 years, they were supposed to build these 2,500.
There was no contract in 1982. This contract is a 1987 contract.
Okay. But that was 10 years ago.
12 years ago.
Okay. Now, I understand that they now commit to building 400 more shelters. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Is that 400 in addition to, that's just 400. So that's not in addition to the ones that theoretically they owe us.
They don't owe us any additional shelters other than the 400 that exist in this amendment.
So in this amendment, they will build 400 shelters, 25 a month. Is that what I understand?
Correct.
Okay. So in 16 months, they'll have built all 400.
Correct.
All right.
Approximately. I mean, there's,
Approximately?
correct.
And what about maintenance? Because 3/4 of the shelters that I see have no glass in the side and in the front, I mean, if side and back. And I wonder what kind of shelter that provides, if you know what I mean. If they've removed the glass inside in order to keep maintenance costs down.
All right.
That's the ones in my district, all 50 of them, God bless them.
All right, thank you, Ms. Goldberg. They sold this company, did we had no authority to approve the transfer?
Yeah.
Did we do that?
The company was bought I mean, Outdoor Systems is still the contractor. CBS
But
bought
there's a different
Outdoor
different ownership.
CBS bought Outdoor Systems. Outdoor Systems still exists as a subsidiary of CBS.
And
I
so
mean,
we
it's just-
don't have
it's
any
not-
right to approve that?
We do have a right to approve it, yes.
Ms. Sikowski?
A lot of the questions that I think the council members are asking is in some of the information that the Public Works Committee reviewed. I think the request by Mr. Burnson for lists of where they are, where they were supposed to be, where the demand is all in the file. So I think that's why it's very easy to provide it to you in sooner than 60 days. Mr. Fuhrer, you had asked about the specific plan areas. I, too, have some of those. And I think that this amendment, and what I want to let everybody know is this is an amendment to an existing contract that the city attorney has been telling us we may be tied to for at least 2003 already. So they can they have the right to extend their contract and their options. We may or may not have right to deal with that. What we have today is an agreement, an agreed-on amendment which benefits the city, benefits the city in terms of not only revenue, but in performance of a company where things were suggested, attempted to be done, but not concrete. This puts in concrete what they have to do, what the time specifications are, what the maintenance ought to be. It also puts into the contract the flexibility, where some of these can be reserved to be non-advertisement. We may, by council option, have a small percentage that we can say are non-advertising for areas that we either have scenic highways, specific plans, or whatever amenities. It gives the final approval to every location to the council, with suggested locations, 25% to come from the council offices, 25% to come from the company, 50% to come from where the high ridership is. That you couldn't ask for a more definitive point as to where these ought to occur. It allows for flexibility in some of those areas where we have groups providing their own kind of shelters, not necessarily models like this, but as long as they aren't advertised, private groups can individually put them in, as well as have the council have some authority. The other thing that this does, member of the council, is many of us, I know that I am one, had wanted to have shelters in certain areas that we don't have enough right-of-way. We've got either a narrow sidewalk or too much happening in the right-of-way. This creates different styles and allows modification of some of the shelters where there's a lesser right-of-way, where they need to do things to fit in and around different utility poles and everything. It is truly a betterment. For those who say, let's turn the whole thing down now and go out to RFP, that means we would probably be with existing status quo of non-performance, non-compliance, and non-revenue for about 1.5 years, if not 2 years. By amending this today, we have a relatively short window, a 3-year window of performance under new amended contract guidelines. We are all going to go out to a new RFP in the year 2003, and we can start that process now. But we will be looking at the measuring of the performance of this company that may or may not want to be a bidder, who's got a very short window of 3 years to fix what wasn't done right back when we initiated this contract in 1987, probably too loosely written, but it has every ability to hold this contractor and performance to look at and judge what will be coming when we do the new RFP in the year 2003, and should be begun earlier so that by the time we get there, we know that we have no discontinuity.
Of course, Chris, we could, in approving the transfer of the ownership, we could impose new restrictions if we wanted to, I would assume. Mr. Holden?
Hey, Chris, your name is Chris, sir?
Yes?
How long have you been working on this project?
On this, I've been general counsel to Public Works since 1980.
Since 1980, then you ought to know. And you know what you're doing? You're camouflaging the truth. as it relates to the agreement. Now, before Outdoor Shelters, it was Gannett. Before Gannett, it was Shelter Media. There's a clause in the agreement, in the contract, and I read it over 3 or 4 times. It was under my committee before, Mr. President, where we are required, if we elect to take the option, to approve the transfer of ownership. And at that time, we can change the terms and conditions of the contract if we choose to do so. Now, you're aware of that. If you're not, you should be aware of it, because you've been in my, if you're the same person, we've talked about this over and over again. Now,
You're
now
right,
they can sell
Counselor,
this
we
to-
have.
We have.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And if you'd like the advice that I gave you, I will tell the entire council what I told you.
Well, the fact of the matter is that I read the agreement, and you were dead wrong, as you are today. We should have taken advantage of that option. We had a right to have bring that matter before the council for transfer of ownership. We have to sign off on that. You have never recommended to us that we do that. And that is a stipulated agreement within the contract. And you've gone, and we haven't had an RFP on this in 25 years. Where is it written that we should not have one? And why are you doing this? I don't understand it. And
Councilman, I'm not doing anything except rendering legal advice.
Okay. Blow up if you want to. I'm doing it. The fact of the matter is that we have not had an RFP on this issue since the very beginning. The way they circumvent the process, they keep transferring ownership, transfer ownership, transfer ownership, and you don't get a comparison. So, yes, I guess I'll have to agree with Mr. Bernstein and all. And the President, you can change the terms and conditions, number one. Number two, Ms. Goldberg, when I had this issue, was complaining as I was. You were not maintaining the shelters. You probably don't care. You don't live in my neighborhood anyway. Number two, they were not providing shelters where they're needed in her district, my district, and others, because they said it was not cost-effective to do so. And you're going to give them another year extension for every 100 shelters they're going to put in? It's absurd. Maybe some other competitive outfit would do even better than that. And you're saying it to us today, take this or nothing. We don't have to take it. It is not written that we should. If you're interested in seeing the clause in the contract, I have a stack of papers that are like that, and we'll share that with you.
Your time is up, Mr. Holden. Mr. Pacheco.
It says right here, change of ownership.
Mr. Holden.
City approval shall be required.
Mr. Holden, you're out of order.
It says it right here.
Yeah, that's okay.
I agree with the previous statements that the transit-dependent communities don't seem to be serviced as well as they could be. At this point, I'm not prepared to go forward on this contract and will be voting against it today and need some more information.
Mr. Wax?
Oh, how to say how I really feel without running the risk of agreeing with Mr. Holden. The fact of the matter is, a lot of this does hinge upon the advice we're getting from the city attorney as to the rights of the parties under the existing contract. If the city attorney is correct, then we have a better deal than we would otherwise get under the contract by the negotiated changes on the extension. If the city attorney is not correct, we could be going out to bid commencing January or March 2000, and get a lot better deal than we're getting now. The fact of the matter is, under the current contract, the city is not getting the revenues that it can be getting I guarantee you if it went out to bid, based upon what I see in other cities. We're not getting the control over siting that all of you are complaining about, and the maintenance requirements, well, I don't use the word, are basically non-existent. So if you don't have good maintenance and you can't control the siting and you aren't getting the revenue, you're getting a bad deal. It may have been a good deal years ago, but times change, competition develops, and the fact of the matter is, like with so many other contracts, if we were to go out to competitive bidding today, I guarantee you, even if the same contractor got the contract again, they'd get a lot more than they just have negotiated. On the other hand, if the city attorney is right, and we would simply be opening ourselves up to prolonged litigation and all, then the changes that have been negotiated for this remaining 3-year period or so are a lot better than the status quo. So we're tough. I mean, we're in a tough spot. My tendency is, however, to go with trying to get more, because that's my nature here, on always trying to get more for the city. My tendency is also to believe that they wouldn't have negotiated the changes that they've already negotiated if the legal rights were so clearly determined. They wouldn't have even given in what they've given in now. What would have been their incentive to do? So they must have some doubts about how they stand legally under the current contract to have given us what they're now going to give us for this extension. That being so, why don't we go all the way? I'm really torn on this, and a lot of it, I don't want to replace my legal judgment with Mr. Westhoff. He's a very fine lawyer, and but I see this as not being totally black and white. I see this as still something that is subject to tougher negotiation, because we are clearly not getting, and I repeat, if we went out to bid, even if the current contract holder got the contract, which might well be what would happen, we'd get a better deal than we're getting right now. You'd get better maintenance, more control of siting, and certainly more revenue, based upon, look what Pasadena, Santa Monica, Long Beach, and all are getting.
Mr. Wax, I don't agree with that.
Thank you.
We surveyed, we went before.
Your time is up, Mr. Earl, but you answer the question.
In the negotiations, we made a survey of Southern California, excepting for the
How
town
about
I
Long
have.
Beach and Santa Monica? What do they get versus what do we get?
I don't have that list with me, but my recollection is the only city that is getting more than this is Seal Beach.
Seal Beach.
Small.
Who negotiated that? Who negotiated that contract?
It's irrelevant, Mr. President.
Would you get me the data for Santa Monica,
Fine.
Long Beach, and Pasadena?
Fine.
Okay, Mrs. Chick.
Yes, colleagues, having been on the Public Works Committee, not only when this final proposal came before us that we have forwarded to you, but when the discussion came to committee on several other occasions, it became very clear to me that not moving forward was the greatest detriment to the city and to transit riders. The committee members were aware that perhaps we could get more, but that what we had before us was certainly a very major step in the right direction, and that we can get more when we go out to bid for an entirely new contract. I want to ask our city attorney to refresh my memory why we extended the contract to 2003 and why we didn't include a specific date when we want a new RFP out on the streets.
Sure. Well, the first one is quite easy. The original contract had a specific contract term, and it called for 5 additional renewal options.
So this was within that?
Correct, within the original contract. 2 of those renewal options were exercised by them building 2 increments of 50 shelters each, 100 shelters. Then there was an amendment because of the Lonnie project where they built certain Lonnie amenities which were non-revenue generating, and in return for that, a year's additional contract was added on to the, or a year was added onto the contract. That left 3 options under the original contract, which is why the 2003 date is the original termination date if all the options were exercised. So that's why the,
Right, so
the
it's within
2003
the guidelines of what the contract...
Correct. This is not an extension of the contract. This is a utilization of existing options.
And then my second question about,
Right.
can we specify a date?
Right. Of course. And when we were in committee said, we want you back in 3 months and then twice a year after that reporting on it. It was staff's intention in discussing it with Street Services. They intend to start 2 years before the contract terminates developing the RFP. We will
The
then
RFP will be out on the street when?
probably the best time. You don't want to be too early, you don't want to be too late. If you're too early, you haven't gained the knowledge from the different things that are tried in this amendment in order to tailor the RFP. If you go out too late, then you're not going to be soon enough at the termination.
Colleagues, I would urge us to go forward today. I think we are starting to nitpick and try to achieve perfection that could very well bring us a lawsuit and get us right back where we've been for years, which is not moving forward on transit shelters. What I would like is for the city attorney, as soon as I finish speaking, to make a recommendation with a specific date by when a new RFP should be presented to the council and then put out on the street. I think that that would lower the concerns of some in terms of our very good intentions of ending this existing
thank you.
contract and putting it out to bid. If you could answer
Sure.
that question.
April 30th of 2002 would be the appropriate date.
I would so move then to amend this report to mandate a new RFP being prepared and put out to bid by April 2002.
2002. That would give us 1 year to
Mr.
go through the process.
Mr. Fuhr seconds.
Ms. Goldberg, you won't be here.
That's my concern, is how slow this process is. First of all, I'm looking at the amendment, attachment number 6, which is the contract. And under item 4, on page 3 of the contract, it says change of ownership 4.1. City approval shall be required for any change of the contractor's ownership exceeding a total and/or cumulative change of 5% in such ownership. Okay, so now what does that mean then? If they were sold to CBS, isn't that a change of ownership?
That's correct.
Now, don't we have to approve that?
That's correct.
And what if we fail to approve that?
Well, the council has to act. You either, by not approving or by not disapproving it, you would, in essence, the contract would continue. So
So that's a meaningless article in there.
No, it's not a meaningless article.
If you can't disapprove,
You have to have a reason not to approve it. You have to act in good
if it's in
faith.
fact would make MTA's buses and this group a monopoly in the city, that might be a reason.
That would certainly be a factor, yes.
And if that turns out to be the case, I'm giving you information that I don't know the veracity
And
of, that's why I'm saying
I
this.
don't know either.
But if it were to be true, then maybe we wouldn't want to do that.
That would be a factor that the
And
council
if we
could consider.
chose not to approve of the change of ownership because we don't want to create a monopoly of all the transit advertising in one place, what is the effect if we just came to that decision?
I mean, I can't anticipate, but I would certainly believe that we would open the city up to a potential lawsuit.
Then what is the value of having that clause in the contract? If you can't disapprove it, then it's a meaningless clause, is it not?
If you had a company that bought this, that had no experience, that had a track record of not being able to perform other contracts,
If it
those are
had
the
a track
types of
record of
factors.
not maintaining the shelters?
Well, this is a new company. This company has only been on board for a relatively short period of
So
time.
then it is a meaningless phrase.
It is determined factually. You have to look at all of the facts, and there are certain factors that you could consider that would be relevant to making a determination to not approve the change in ownership.
Item 14, additional shelters, 14.1. The city shall retain the right to require additional shelters on a reasonable basis to be constructed beyond the total designated in this contract. The city will first offer each authorization to construct additional shelters to the contractor. If the contractor refuses to agree within 30 days of the offer, the city may proceed to obtain bids from other interested parties. So if some of us thought we wanted 2,500 shelters instead of 400 being added to 900, which is 1,300, we could exercise this clause?
Those are for non-revenue generating shelters, but yes, if you wanted to pay to have
It
an
doesn't
additional-
say non-revenue generating.
That read in conjunction with the other terms and conditions, those additional shelters are non-revenue generating.
Mr. President, I will conclude. I believe we need to have a closed session and to discuss these matters with our attorneys, because I'm late to coming to this, I admit, and I may be dead wrong because I'm reading information I don't know the veracity of, but I think we ought to at least discuss it with our attorneys in closed session before we make a decision on this. And if I'm dead wrong, I'll back off and I'll apologize, I
Is
promise.
it proper for a closed session on this item? Potential lawsuit? Potential lawsuit?
We have been, I think that...
Been threatened?
Yes.
Mr. President. And have the city attorney, Mr. Hahn, down here so he can listen to what this Mr. Westhoff is saying.
Well, I'm not taking issue with what anybody says.
yeah.
I just want
Mr.
more
President.
There are a lot of people listening to what you're saying, Nate. That's, Mr. Ridley Thomas?
Mr. President, it's clear to me that each of us might best benefit from more review of this item. And Mr. Westhoff, I would encourage you to speak with members of the council who have not been brought up to speed. I take no exception to the committee's recommendation. I've listened very carefully and had additional conversations with Ms. Walters here today, Ms. Miskowski, and Ms. Chick, all members of the Public Works Committee. But there are substantial questions that have been raised by a number of members. Therefore, I do believe that a continuance is in order, so that those who may wish to vote affirmatively, if that's indeed the recommendation of the city attorney and the CLA in the final analysis, can do so. But to do so at this point without being adequately informed would be problematic, and I do not think that we can proceed. So I guess a 1 week, 2 week continuance is in order. Ms. Walters, whatever, 1 week continuance, and I would so move.
There's also a motion that go into executive session, so,
Look in that context.
yeah. All right, there's still several people want to be heard, so why don't we vote on a continuance? Is it a 1 week continuance? All right, prepare the roll on
Can we
what about
continue it to
this?
Friday? No.
A week from this coming Friday.
a week from this coming Friday?
Yeah.
I'm
because I'll
out
be
of
here.
town on city business the next 2 weeks.
Well, when
let's-
you come back.
Well, it's,
First week in August.
Good.
Okay, the first week in August would be August, what date would that be? August 3rd? Yeah, August 3rd. So is there any objection to continue till August 3rd?
move it, Mr. President.
Seeing none, that will be the order. Okay, the next item.
There's a request from Councilmember Pacheco to reconsider item number 38.
Look on your agenda.
Yeah, I know, I have to change first.
Mr. President, members,
It's a motion by the Salesian Boys and Girls Club.
I would simply ask for some language clarification that we, after the word youth center in the first sentence, we include along with Council District 14, and in the second paragraph strike the words except insurance.
Do you want to delete accept insurance?
And add the words, yes, delete accept insurance and add the words along with Council District 14 in the first sentence after the word.
All right, is there any
youth center.
objections to those, that amendment? Seeing none, prepare the roll on 38 as amended. Tabulate the vote.
Ayes.
That is approved. Next item.
Item 36 called special.
Mr. Wax, you called 36 special?
I'd like someone to explain what it is. I mean, when
Michael Karsh is here. Where is,
and I'd like, is our
where is this in the?
Is our fire department here also to give us?
Yes,
Our
the
chief
fire
is here.
department
I'd like to hear.
and the city
Mr.
attorney.
Carson, the chief, and.
Where is this in, is it being heard in Sacramento?
Yes, AB 1411 has passed the Assembly, and yesterday it passed the Senate Committee on Public Employment. It has moved to the Appropriations Committee, where it is likely to be heard in August. Legislature is set to recess on Friday for 1 month.
Okay. All right, can you explain the bill?
Yes, AB 1411 would establish a procedural bill of rights for firefighters in the state of California. The city attorney and the fire department have objections to one provision in the bill, which essentially strikes at the provisions that the city has already made and is operating under for noting, keeping a record of complaints against personnel. What this bill requires is that any kind of action noted about a firefighter should be part of the entire personnel record and should be agreed to by the person about whom the note is written. This flies in the face, however, of procedures that have been adopted by the city for such disciplinary actions, partly due to the Christopher Commission, which was enacted as part of our charter several years ago in the police department. Tracking of disciplinary issues concerning peace officers and firefighters in the incident case should be kept as a separate parallel record system, which would never be part of a promotional record. If it were, then it would have to go through to a disciplinary board. But to see the track record of given officers in the setting that has now been set up by the city and is considered to be the best way in which we can track these procedures would be obviated by AB 1411. The City Council in January of this year adopted a position to change state legislation as it relates to peace officers in the police department on this very same issue. Because of that, we have gone along with the recommendation of the city attorney and the fire department to oppose the bill.
All right, Mr. Wax, you call this special.
You're saying you oppose it unless it's amended. But could I ask, I'd like the chief and the city attorney to also comment, just so that we can understand their opinions.
That's basically the same thing. This bill is similar to the police officer's Bill of Rights, and there are a number of provisions in there that we support very much. It's the issue of discouraging complaints that, for the fact that those complaints would then have to be acknowledged and public to all members, so that it would inhibit complaints coming forward in some of the issues that we've dealt with in work environment issues, discrimination, complaints from the public about service complaints. Sometimes those complaints are founded, some are unfounded. They don't become a part of the member's personnel file unless we pursue that from a disciplinary perspective. When we do that, they are open, the member is confronted with those complaints.
Mr. Burnson?
Yes.
Wait, let's see. Did you want to add?
Yeah.
I did. Diane Wentworth, Assistant City Attorney. The language of the act about which there's a question is that no firefighter shall have any comment adverse to his or her interest entered into any file without the firefighter first seeing that. There are obviously different ways of interpreting this. We could interpret it to mean that it is not an adverse comment until, in fact, we've gotten to a point where we're going to take disciplinary action, at which point the person would get to see it. However, a court might interpret it to mean that during the course of an investigation, as comments adverse to a firefighter come in that should not be disclosed because you're in the middle of an investigation, we would nonetheless have to turn that over. And it is just that risk, I think, where we'd be more comfortable with that particular language coming out. Everything else in there is similar to the Peace Officer's Bill of Rights. Most of the protections are already there. The fire department is perfectly willing to add whatever additional protections this would impose on them. It's just that little phrase that's problematic.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you specify that, because the question I was going to ask, I don't see anything wrong with them reviewing, the word review, but if there is a criminal investigation going on, then that should be exempted. And I would like to offer an amendment to this, that we oppose it unless amended to specify that they shall have the ability to review unless a criminal investigation is being conducted.
Let me, if I might suggest, if the fire department is doing its own investigation, which might result in administrative charges, not criminal charges, they may have the same issues where people who are talking to them, who have been promised confidentiality or other information that might change other people's testimony. It need not be criminal. But I think your concern is that before any punitive action is taken against a firefighter, he or she should see that information. And I think by merely removing the words "or any other file," so that nothing goes in the person's personnel file, would solve the same problem.
It solves it in one respect. It doesn't solve it in another respect. It doesn't solve it in the respect that these comments or these accusations or these complaints are being lodged. And I think if they're not criminal, if they're not criminal in nature, they ought to be, in fact, I think it's the duty of the supervisor to confront, not only to advise them of those, but to confront them with them and hear the other side of the story.
I don't think that there's any issue that that would not be done. It's just really a matter of turning over confidential sources or perhaps a timing issue.
Obviously, confidential sources are confidential. We wouldn't do that anyway, would we?
Well, but I think the
Under this
concern
legislation,
is
would-
that might,
Excuse me, under this legislation, would we be required to give up confidential?
that would be the concern.
That would be the concern. Why don't we place an amendment in that would protect confidential communications? And I would so move as part of my amendment to that.
Anyone else want to be heard on this? Mr. Holden is the chair of the committee. You're a
Me, Mr.
powerful
President,
individual.
another example where that
Anybody who wears a jacket like that?
that there's an effort on the part of some legislators to get a bill enacted into law and may not serve the good purpose of all parties and interests. Seems to me at least that if any adverse information is going to be placed in an employee's file, they should know about it. And that's all the amendment really suggests. I think there's a flaw, a technical flaw in the bill that's presented, and we should oppose it until and unless that is amended or corrected. I don't see anything wrong. It seems pretty simple to me. I wouldn't want anything in my file unless I know about it and that's adverse, because when it comes time for review, if the chief moved on, if the deputy assistant chief moved on, and they see this information, and the employee is not aware and never been given an opportunity to respond to it, then of course, they don't know why they're not being promoted or given certain advantages compared to other employees. They would be obviously disadvantaged. So it's a simple request for an amendment, Mr. Bernstein. And if the bill is not going to incorporate this amendment, we ought to kill it. Ask that it die very quickly, hang in the wind.
We could request, I don't think we have the authority to kill it.
Mr. President, what we do here in the city council really has a lot of effect on what happens in Sacramento. And it's,
Yeah, all those Northern Californian people, it really affects them.
no, we have, Mr. President, we really do have a lot of friends up there.
Yeah.
We can get a lot of done. If you just say the word, I'll carry out the order.
Okay. Okay, Nate. Take your sledgehammer with you when you go up there. Okay, then there's a motion to, we got the motion, Conrad?
We have amended the ability to review unless all criminal investigations conducted and protect confidential communication.
Chief, is that okay with you? All right, prepare the roll on that. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
That is approved. Next item.
Now, we have item 33 currently on the table, which is closed session item, so now it's time for public comment.
Okay, we have Richard Robinson.
Mr. President, members of council, the lack of ethical behavior in the city is caused by the lack of morality nationwide. Mr. Ferraro, sir, as I tried to say here several months ago, the President of the United States did not cheat on the First Lady. He cheated on Hillary Rodham. Thank you.
Yeah, let's try to keep it issues that we have some control over. Admin Peck.
That's very close, sir. It's Adnan, and the last name is Peck, P-E-C-K. And we're doing a documentary in the San Fernando Valley. And we, the honest Christians and Jews of the new San Fernando Valley County, demand an honest audit and accounting of our fair share of tax and revenue. We give 33% in tax and revenue, receive a 22% return. Where does our fair share go? How is it being spent by old LA County? Why is Governor Davis, Mayor Reardon, Laura Chick, and all members of the City Council, City Attorney, Attorney General, and the FBI and Insurance Commissioner abusing the valley? Why are illegal, corrupt immigrants buying fake California driver's license and false stolen Social Security cards in open public on the streets of Los Angeles? How much is fraud? How much is stolen both from Los Angeles County and the new San Fernando Valley County? Why is everyone neglecting their duty and allowing criminals to steal openly from us? Why is this not a felony? Why is this not being taken care of vigorously? How much welfare fraud? How many illegal immigrants steal our tax and revenue, and we pay for their food, their clothing, and shelter in schools, the county hospitals, local police, and fire and paramedics? How much is being stolen from Medicare, welfare, and again, Social Security? Question to Mayor Reardon. All City Council members, City Attorney Hahn, the Attorney General, FBI local. Why are innocent children in the Valley being raped and molested and stalked and abused by their teachers in LA Unified School District? Why isn't there a background check on all teachers and employees who work in public and private schools? Why isn't there instant new federal Los Angeles County background check done? Who is protecting the children? Why are you wasting our taxes? Another question. Who is this man, Mr. Sherman, in the City of County of Los Angeles parking? There is no difference between this man and his abusive parking violations for the Valley of actually holding a gun to our head and stealing from us with broken meters. The meters are broken. CBS did a report on it. Why is no one looking into this? Yet they steal openly in the Valley. They give us parking tickets unjust and then laugh in our faces. Do they have a quota? Do they have a hidden agenda? Are they getting a kickback? How long has Mr. Sherman and his little SS been stealing from the Valley? There's no difference than a petty criminal putting a gun to my head in the Valley and you actually stealing from me with my parking tickets. I request a documentary from the city that should be done with everybody in here. For 30 days, Mayor Reardon, all City Council members, City Attorney Hahn, the Police Chief and Sheriff, and Jim Sherman, all members of their staff, A, shall be parked at all of these parking meters around town. Let the meters run out. Let them pay their fines out of their own pockets because the meters don't work properly. Also, CBS ran a special on this with the towing that's going on in LA County, where people are stealing from us in open public with corrupt towing companies. Again, for the test for the next 30 days, all City Council people should be parking in parking lots, and towing companies should be taking you and your cars, and you should be paying it. What we're asking for you to do is have an independent council open up the books for the San Fernando Valley. We're demanding it. We're demanding an open public hearing on things that you are not taking care of us. Ms. Chick is starting to. It's kind of nice to see our roads being paved. I appreciate you taking the time for me. I will see you, Mr. Chairman, on a regular basis down here as our documentary continues into the year 2000. Yeah. We appreciate your courtesy.
Thank you. Sonia Ramirez. Yeah. Sonia Ramirez. Vinceman Potts there. Candido Mars.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we took another step in developing our neighborhood councils. But as Mr. Bernson stated, we've had it in our district for many years, and I'm living proof of that. So, Mr. Bernson, I want to thank you for empowering me, because 9 years ago I came in here with an issue when we wanted to make parks safer and gang activity free. And it didn't pass here, but you got me involved in my community. I went out and took care of the parks, and now I'm doing other things. So it's from one committee to another. So when you ask, are you going to empower your communities, you better be prepared for the responsibilities that are going to go along with that. And as far as the general manager, it has to be somebody that really has a background in dealing with communities. And so again, I thank you, Mr. Bernson, for all that you've done for us.
Leonard Shapiro.
Mr. President and council members, we're all in a good mood today, so I think I'll give you some excerpts from next week's L.A. Watts Times. Adolf Hitler popularized the technique of the big lie that he used successfully from 1933 to 45 in a failed attempt to control the world. He discovered that falsehoods told repeatedly soon assumed the status of truth. Our own local politicians seem to have learned from history that big lies, half-truths, and scapegoating still have an impact on the functioning of local government. And the recent activity of officials of the CRA shows this. When CRA Administrator John Malloy resigned from his $181,000 per year job, he indicated that he couldn't understand why his commissioners couldn't accept his $159 million budget. His budget was financed exactly as CRA budgets have been financed in the last 50 years, with bond borrowing from tax increment financing. Yet, the CRA commissioners would have nothing to do with it, so Malloy was gone and the problems still remain. CRA was established in 1952 as an amendment to the state constitution for the purpose of rebuilding the deteriorating blight of the inner city. Laws giving the city the right to refinance this with tax increment money were passed and used. That was the start of the original big lie, which would be told and retold during the years by the politicians and their hirelings to all questioners. When something seems too good to be true, it usually is. The tax increment from new building was dwarfed by the tax income that came from inflation and increase in properties from everybody in the project area, not from the new building. The CRA told people that it wouldn't cost you any money because we're putting up buildings that you wouldn't have had, and the money from the tax increment from these big buildings will be used. But that was the big lie. Most of the money that they used to finance the CRA came from the 2% increase each year due to inflation. The CRA was supposed to clean up Fifth Street in the Skid Row section, and they never spent a dime on the really blighted area. But because they didn't give enough campaign contributions to make themselves known citywide. With the CRA spending's orgy was over, the redeveloped Bunker Hill City Business District in Little Tokyo was supposed to revert to the city. And the city was supposed to draw taxes after 20 years on these new rebuilt projects that never reverted back. It's still 50 years later, they're still dragging all the money to pay the old bills that they incurred, and the city got no advantage whatsoever. Now the chickens have come home to roost, as I said before, and the papers quoted Mr. Bernson as saying it. There is now no new tax increment coming, and the people like Councilman Hernandez and Holden and Ridley Thomas who think that they're going to get tax increment funding for projects in the area are mistaken, because there is no more 2% increase every year.
Okay, Mr. Shapiro.
The main effect is, let's remember
Don't read
what a big lie
your
is.
whole column. Don't read your whole column.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
But let's remember what a big lie is, and let's have no part with a big lie.
Okay. Okay, the public comment period is closed. Next item.
Item 33, closed session
Okay,
item.
let's clear the desk off. We're going to go into executive session, so will everyone not involved with the executive session leave the council chamber?
The desk is clear.
All right, we have some adjourning motions, so would everyone please stand?
John?
Mr. Bernson?
Yes, I would ask that we adjourn in memory of Herman Markman, who passed away on July 12th. He's survived by his wife Natalie, son Robert, daughters Leslie Markham and Joy Davis, and a granddaughter, Lisa Markham, who's a very close friend of my daughter Sarah.
Mr. Hernandez?
Mr. President, members of the council, it's with great sadness that I ask us to adjourn in the name of Charlie English, and a lot of us knew him as Charlie. He was a law partner for Gerald Chalif, who sits on our police commission, but Charlie died on July 10th at UCLA Medical Center of complications of a brain tumor. He was a graduate of Santa Monica High School, and in 1966 he was a graduate of UCLA with his law degree. His legal career lasted more than 30 years. In 1998, he was named Outstanding Defense Attorney by the LA County Bar Association. A lot of people knew Charlie because he represented many of the stars, and including myself. He's survived by his wife, Marilyn, two sons, Mitchell, Charles, James, and his daughter, Julia. The services are tomorrow at Trinity Baptist Church in Santa Monica, and his family has asked that the donations be made at to Dr. Timothy Clohithy's brain cancer research in Westwood, or the Taft High School cross-country team. And again, I just wanted to comment that Charlie, as a defense attorney, was someone who cared very much about his clients and really gave the kind of advice that was in the best interest of the client.
Second that. Ms. Sikowski.
I just wanted to be a co-presenter on Charlie English. He was a constituent of the 11th District, and I think it's said best by some of his friends. Jerry Chaleff said, "Charlie never believed there was any conflict between honesty and integrity and vigorous advocacy. He was widely respected among his colleagues and in the courts he practiced." And Superior Court Judge Larry Fidler said, "In a business where people seldom like one another, nobody didn't like Charlie." And that's true for anyone who knew him.
Mr. Wax.
Yes, I'd like the council to adjourn in the memory of Stanley Wayner. He was business community, the CEO of Wiley Labs, and he had also been president of the UCLA Alumni Association, a member of the Board of Regents of the University of California when he served in that, and UCLA Alumnus of the Year, and he'll be missed by many people in the UCLA family.
Call the roll.
Aye.
The council is adjourned.